What's up, guys? It is Modern Craftsman Monday.
Monday. No Tyler.
No Tyler for the intro, but he does join us for this episode. We are talking with Aaron Miller from Hummingbird Hill Homes. If you guys want to check him out, Hummingbird Hill Homes on Instagram. Awesome website. He's even got his own trademark. But we go down almost a 2-hour rabbit hole of pre-construction. A huge topic that gets brought up on Instagram, Clubhouse, this podcast, every platform, how to navigate pre-construction. So if you guys are interested in hearing more about that, you're going to want to stick around. But we also talk about health and wellness.
Yeah.
And doing yoga in between tea breaks on job sites.
It's a good one, guys. You'll enjoy it, I hope.
This podcast is brought to you by Duration Moulding and Millwork. You might have heard that James Hardie is dropping its artisan line of beveled siding. If you're a user of that line, the folks at Duration invite you to try their beveled siding on your next build. Longer lengths, no required edge sealing, no clearance restrictions, easy and safe to work with, and the authentic look of wood siding. There's lots to love. And if you need special reveal or profile, that's not a problem either. To learn more about Duration Polyash products, please visit their website at durationmillwork.com and be sure to check them out on Instagram. Ever since John told me about you guys, I've been on your website, and you have an extremely impressive portfolio. And I want to talk, obviously we want to talk about what you guys are doing today. You look like you're very professional with all of your paperwork behind you and these large posters and presentations and etc. But let's get an introduction to who you are, and let's take it back to where you started.
Yeah. So actually, I had probably a different route to construction than most. I worked in construction.
I love when people say that, by the way.
I know exactly. I'm probably repeating.
No, it's good because I feel like a lot of people. It perks people up. Like, all right, give it to me. What'd you do? Would you sell guy a pizza and all of a sudden he wanted you to build him a house?
Yeah. So I worked construction through high school and university. But when I got out of university, I landed actually in a sort of corporate job, and worked through that corporate job in sales, marketing. Was transferred down to Minnesota, worked in the head office there for 3 years. That's where my third daughter was born. So I have a little American on the Canadian side here. And then came back and managed the company here in Canada. So have sort of more of a corporate business background. And during that time, fixing up, renovating homes, I built 2 homes. This is in the span of about 15 years. So built a couple of homes. My best friend is an architect here in Toronto. So sort of was gaining some experience through that process. And then it was 2009. I just couldn't take the whole corporate America sort of BS and the craziness that goes along with that, and travel and not seeing your kids. So decided at that point to start Hummingbird Hill, and was basically me in a pickup truck in the beginning, doing the multitude of roles, being sort of site super, project manager, accountant, sales guy, marketing guy, and grew it from there. And over a few years, I met my favorite carpentry firm was a firm called Craft Carpentry. And they were doing some work on some of the projects that I had underway. And I knew, I don't know what you guys think, but I was sort of surveying all the builders that I was competing against, and everyone was basically saying the same thing, right? Everyone's basically saying my quality is better than everybody else. So I was looking and thinking about how do I differentiate or how do I create that differential advantage? Um, Building science, was really starting to take hold. A lot of the research was starting to present itself, and I knew, I was interested in building sustainably. So the timing worked that I actually basically merged with my favorite carpentry firm. So I have two partners, and we focused on, number one, sort of building high performance or sustainable homes. We became Passive House certified, and then that was sort of step one. And then over the years, we started to realize that the whole, in my opinion, sustainability is kind of percolating into this emerging field of health and wellness and the built environment and all of the research that's coming out of that. So we became WELL AP certified, and here we are, basically. Fast forward.
Why was the number one thing that you guys focused on? Why was it Passive House certification?
Yeah, we sort of looked at, there's a couple of local programs here in the Toronto area. There's Net Zero Ready. I find Passive House is probably the best representation of the building science, in my opinion. It's not totally applicable, and to be honest with you, we actually don't build a ton of certified passive houses, but we take some of the building science and experience that we've sort of gained over the years and apply it to all of our builds, like air leakage rates, continuous exterior insulation, et cetera, et cetera. So we just identified Passive House as kind of, we knew we wanted to set ourselves apart. We felt being certified in a building science recognized sort of identification was important. So yeah, we sort of gravitated to Passive House.
And that was day one.
Shortly after we came together as a firm. So Hummingbird and basically Craft. Obviously, we kept Hummingbird as the brand, and a lot of it was, once you commit to building high performance and what that means, framing really becomes a critical part of that. And one of the partners is probably one of the best framers here in the city. So that was, I just got tired of every time you'd hire a framing crew, you kind of go through the details for, as an example, air tightness, and you'd hire the same framing crew for the next job, and you get 4 different guys, and sort of starting all over again. So I thought, let's vertically kind of own the carpentry piece for us, and take it from framing to finished carpentry. So we started with 3 carpenters in the beginning, and we're now at about 25. And we just sort of own that as a vertical integration.
When you started how long from when you started Hummingbird till when you merged?
It was about 5-6 years.
And were you doing this similar style work? Did you, I guess where I'm trying to go back to is, did you go from corporate America to high-end residential homes immediately?
No, sort of the typical. You start off again with my buddy who's the architect. He helped, obviously a lot, but started with some renos, some lower end new builds, and then kind of graduated from there, so to speak.
What was, with that being said, what was you set out to get into new homes, obviously, and you kind of took what was necessary. So back then, what was your, I guess we can call it a marketing strategy from going from renovation to getting into new homes?
We still do renovations.
Sure.
We do about 40% renovations, 60% new builds. I think it's just a natural progression when you're looking to kind of continuously improve, and you're developing the relationships with the architects, interior designers. I think it's just a natural progression. You start to move towards the more impactful architecture that happens to also typically be new builds.
Right.
And if 35 to 40% of your work is renovations, it's probably a bit of a rabbit hole to go down. But sorry, I think my mic just unplugged. How are you kind of integrating what you're doing into existing infrastructure and existing homes and kind of bringing that model into those builds?
Yeah, I mean, renovations are a different animal, right? I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys.
Because I feel like most people end up like once they get to new builds, a lot of times let the renovations go because it's just like a completely different beast.
Yeah. I think if I didn't have the carpentry arm to our business, I probably would consider letting the renovations go. I mean, new builds are a defined process, right? Like you can control that a whole lot better than renovations. But because we have 25 carpenters, we can take on, and actually the major market for us here is Toronto, and the majority of those projects are renovations. They're 100-plus-year-old homes, probably similar to what you guys see in Boston there. So it's a valuable, lucrative market.
Is that, I mean, so I feel like this question comes up a lot when talking to other builders, as whether or not they should have their own carpenters on staff. Yeah. Or even, I know, John, you mentioned, I think in last podcast, like having painters on staff, like actually, I guess for lack of better terms, like, owning those guys rather than subbing it out and dealing with obviously the issues with high performance, framing and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But you also just touched on the fact that if you didn't have the renovation side, that you would likely, you would consider not having as many, or you would consider not having the carpenters as part of Hummingbird. Is that right?
No, I would definitely keep the carpenters. That's been a game changer for us. Being able to kind of control carpentry, in my opinion, that's the magic sauce, right? Like that's where you take a nice home and you create the wow.
Right.
And the ability to frame a house. We're doing a lot of modern these days. Modern for us is just taken off. We're probably doing 75% modern now. But to build modern, especially, I mean, you cannot have a framing crew with a typical mindset of get in, get out, and because you're playing catch up, the whole way through the build. And I think the having the carpentry allows us to sort of really focus on our processes from beginning to end, from framing to back framing to all the things that fall between scope that keep a project going to finish carpentry. I would definitely still have that. I probably just wouldn't have as many potentially if we didn't have renovations.
Mm. And renovation you don't want to step away from because it's such a lucrative market.
It's a big market here for sure. We're doing a couple of 100-plus-year-old homes in Toronto. Cool story. We just demoed one, and the framer signed the last block piece of wood. His name was James Pierce, 1908. He signed it and nailed it in. So, but yeah, no, I think that market for us, having the capabilities that we do with the carpentry teamed up with the build resources is a good market for us. I wouldn't give up renovations.
Are your carpenters, do you have an overlap of carpenters between framing and finish, or is it pretty isolated between the two?
We've got so we've got guys we have one framing crew. That's all they do is frame. We're actually starting. We've just opened up a facility. We're panelizing all our builds now. So we're not stick framing on site anymore for the last year or so. But we have a framing crew that's dedicated to that process, both the panelization as well as the installation of the panels and the back framing. Then we have a group of carpenters, I'd say probably 10, that could cross over, right? They do have some framing experience, but they also have some finishing experience. And then I have probably 4 guys that are just phenomenal finish carpenters, and that's all they do.
Yeah, I would say it's important to have, at least to some extent, that overlap, especially if you're looking to do modern builds.
Yeah.
I think whoever's leading that charge needs to have a pretty comprehensive view of the finish line to be able to lead them. I think without that, it's like it could be a good frame, but if you're not accounting for all of those tiny finish details, it's like you still have so much work to kind of adjust things and manipulate things and then change things after, which, I mean, you still have at the end of the day, but I would assume having that overlap helps you guys out.
Oh, for sure. And we purposely actually have organizational meetings where we bring all of the carpenters in, and those discussions happen, right? Like the finished carpenters, if they feel like the framers, didn't meet the standard, they let them know. So there's when you know that you're going to be held accountable at the end of the day, along the spectrum of carpentry. You're absolutely right too. Modern just requires that next level of attention to detail, in my opinion.
I agree with that, and I think so owning both of that is advantageous, and I can see, I would say that more people who are building houses would own like the punch list carpentry, coming back after the frame is done, fine-tuning, tweaking things, and then finish carpentry, but not as many would own the framing and the finish. It'd be subbing the framing out. And I think that, like, in order to be able to execute those details, you need to have that end goal in mind. And I think that handoff there, oftentimes it's like the subcontractor where they overlap a tiny bit, but it's also, there's like a defined distinction between trades, and then somebody else has to pick up. And a lot of times those issues get missed, or, hey, this isn't my problem, where you now have framers in-house who know they're going to hear about it at the end of the day if they kind of leave your finished carpenters with the headache to clean up.
Yeah.
And I think so you have somebody who's there at the beginning and then owning the same people who are there at the end, and like everyone has to be held accountable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Nick's getting a framing crew.
Well, no, I mean this comes up all the time about having carpentry in house, and and going back and forth between, even internally here. It's like we've talked about that in the past. Is should we keep our carpenters on staff, or should we separate them?
Your carpenters are not necessarily framing. Like,
no,
they're
not
doing a new frame.
No, and that's and right now it's a more of a hybrid where we bring in supplemental carpentry crews such as framers, and then we're handling the in between scope, subcontractor support, and then getting into the finish. But that's always been of interest, and that's kind of why we've always built the company with carpentry in mind, is that we want to be able to control the details, and that's something that we've dealt with before, is not getting the same people, or not getting on the crew doesn't have the same mindset as to how we approach something. And that's why I was interested. You don't see you don't see a lot of builders with a dedicated framing crew.
Yeah, and there's a sort of a scale to it, right? Like you can't you need about, in my opinion, about 8 to 10 projects, new builds typically, a year. And you can kind of keep that framing crew going from one site to the next.
So what is that like? I mean, do you feel as though, or like early on when you guys originally merged and you started scaling that, I mean, 8 to 10 new projects a year, it's a lot.
Yeah, which we didn't have in the beginning, right? It was the three carpenters, the one head framer, were everything carpentry. They weren't just framing at that particular time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we kind of built the scale up to kind of supporting a dedicated framing crew. Yeah, and now with the panelization, it's what we're realizing is, I'll give you an example. We just framed a 5,000 square foot above ground house, which would have taken us probably two and a half months ish, give or take. And by sort of panelizing it and going through that process, we were to the roof. The roof is still done traditionally, but to the roof, we were done in like 2 weeks. So all of a sudden it's got us thinking about kind of, okay, this is really efficient, you know, and all the other sort of pros of panelization that I'm sure you guys well are aware. So, but now all of a sudden you're flying through projects, right? And so there's another discussion around sort of the efficiencies of some of these things, you know, the innovations of things like panelization.
Are you guys?
I would assume that helps you guys with the weather up there as well.
It totally does. You're in Boston, right?
I'm in New Jersey. Those two guys are in Boston.
You're in New Jersey, yeah. So the weather's pretty similar to where we are with where you're at. We don't get like a crazy amount of snow. You go 2 hours north of here, and the area called Muskoka, they get slammed with snow.
Yeah.
But for us, for sure, you know, whether it's the winter or whether it's you know, the dead of summer and it's smoking hot, you know, your efficiency is way better.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get foundations in the ground and you're framing stuff inside of a shop, think how much more productive you would be framing inside of a heated, conditioned building rather than being outside in like the teens. I don't know what that is in Celsius.
Yeah. I don't even know.
It's probably negative, so they can brag about it. It's the one thing I've said in this whole podcast. Now Canada hates me.
I see you're drinking a beer, though. I'm quite jealous.
Mm-hmm. That's the only 2 times of the week I get to drink. Tuesday night and like Friday night.
Someone should have sent me the memo. I would have had one ready here.
Oh, man, it's good.
You want to run to your fridge?
Yeah. It looks... all I'm doing every time you take a sip is I'm looking at you. I'm like, oh, my God, that looks good.
It's the best time of the week.
It's like a perfectly frosted glass, perfect amount of...
Oh, it definitely foamed over in the kitchen. That was like,
you're distracting me, man.
I'm sorry. It's you've been distracting me for months with your IG posts, so we're even. I think I want to take it back to, you wanted to leave corporate America, which I never went there, but I'm sure I feel a similar way. And you did marketing there. And what made you jump? What's behind Hummingbird? Because that's very unique. Like for construction, it's everyone's name and ink behind it. Like what you did was something special. I just don't. How'd you get there?
Yeah, the honest truth with the name is, I had to. We have a family cottage that we sold when I started the business, just to kind of pull some money out to be able to fund the initial stages. And the name of the cottage, and it wasn't us that gave it, but it was Hummingbird Hill. And my wife to this day reminds me of, you know, how much she misses this cottage. So when I started the company, that was sort of you know, it fit. I mean, you can talk about when I did a branding exercise before starting the company, I thought it fit because of the, you know, the symbolism of a hummingbird. You know, it's beautiful. You know it when it's around you. They work like hell. So there's a lot of kind of good symbolisms with the name. And you're right, branding. I don't think in construction we pay enough attention to marketing and branding and how we present ourselves to potential clients. So yeah, I'm you know, I do have a bit of a marketing background, and that's you know, that's a big effort from our standpoint, is just how do we brand, how do we present ourselves. It's me looking at like I was saying, right, when I first said, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm looking at all the builders, and if you look at their names or their taglines or what they say, it is literally the same thing. They're all saying the same thing pretty much, right? And they're basically judging their sense of superior quality on aesthetics and the fact that they feel they can execute the aesthetics better than anybody. So from a marketing standpoint, yeah, I'm looking at, what is what differential advantage can I create as a company, and then market that and put that as part of my brand.
So when you sold the cottage, what were you freeing up money for?
Just the like exactly that, like a whole branding, investment in website, the branding exercise. I had a few projects under my belt already. The marketing collaterals, the brochures. I did lunch and learns with architects was one of the early things I did. I actually brought, right as the zip panels were coming out, I brought our local rep here, Rob Rosan. We did a tour of lunch and learns with architects, and just, although it's minor, but just paying for all the lunches and investing in just communicating the brand. There's a lot of soft costs, right, that people don't appreciate when you're starting a business. That's what some of the funds were used for.
Did you create a model, like a company structure to kind of? I remember when I started, before we started Vintage, I went bonkers, and I had this one notebook that has everything in it, from the company structure of like day one, what would it be, 3 months from then, 6 months, a year, and then I put figures to all that to see what, let's say, a perfect startup, what would it cost me? And I think we came up with $200,000. I'm like, yeah. I'll have to go ask. And that was like, let's pay for trucks. Yeah. Let's do all that. So that way we wanted to not, I think the decisions you make if you're thinking about money are different than what you would make if you were thinking about the passion behind it. So we wanted to start Vintage and not, I appreciate the bootstrap part of it. We ended up doing it that way anyways, but it was more of, I wanted to go into it clean. Yeah. And not think about, hey, how am I going to pay for this? That's why when you said you freed up some money to do that, it made me appreciate that it's like, all right, I want to have the right look, and then not have to think about what do I have to sacrifice to get the next check. Yeah. And I think a lot of us, I mean, when I first started my first company, it was bootstrap, but I was taking anything. Yeah. And that was a detriment to my success long term. And I never, ever got the time to focus on branding back then. Yeah. And I think that's what we did this time around. And I can't remember what caught my eye first, if it was the designs that you executed or just the branding.
I think even, the other side of the coin there is that I think that's good when you have the experience to kind of sustain the business that's going to come from that, and having everything, you're hitting the ground running. I feel so many people who start out, like, if you were to have the funding, like you're just getting into business for yourself, and the funding to brand yourself properly, market yourself properly, get all the trucks lettered, this, that, and the other thing, and then it's like, it's so overwhelming for you to get up and running, and then the volume of work that you can generate by doing that. I think so many people actually would benefit from, if they don't have the experience, starting off slowly and generating that network of people organically, and then paying for the stuff as you can, so that as the jobs grow slowly, and you're not being handed these massive jobs or a huge volume of work that you actually can't handle, and trying to tread water at that point. So I think having that experience is very important by doing that, because I think that it could easily overwhelm you if you put all of that stuff in place and we're so well marketed, and then you're like, I can't handle this volume of work, or I can't handle everything that I built at this point.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think I know what you guys see in your markets, but the bar for contractors here is pretty low, right? And it's not, if you can write up a professional looking estimate, you can present yourself well, and you've got the skill set to execute. It's not hard to get started. I think to take it to the next level, to really be able to execute those higher end, impactful architectural designs, that's where I think, how you present yourself from a marketing standpoint really starts to matter for sure. Yeah. But I agree with you. I think that beginning stage, you got to kind of grow in a sustainable way and do it in a smart way for sure.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with a buddy of mine today, and they're a landscaping company, and they cater towards more higher end landscape, using a lot of natural materials and really focusing on design. And they got some new trucks, and he was like, my boss wants to put like full wraps on the trucks, and like they're already an established business and everything else. And he's like, photos of our work on them, and he's like, I need to figure out a way that I can tell him to like use our branding, our existing branding, to create and kind of sustain this clean look, and then, be professional, have a well-designed truck, and that will kind of translate into like a not overly like flamboyant landscape design. Like, we want our branding to match what we're doing, and we're not trying to create this flashy look, and I feel like our vehicles should match that. And I think that if you can properly market yourself, brand yourself well, and it does wonders for like that first impression, or getting your foot in the door, or like you see a truck that looks good and it's well designed, it's laid out, and it's a clean look, and you remember that. Obviously, you have to be able to uphold your end of the bargain by executing work and fulfilling what you have to on the business end. But like, that is such a jump start for a lot of customers to have like the look and the marketing down. Where, I mean, I say all the time, if you branded yourself well, you could get your foot in the door with so many customers, and like, it almost doesn't matter what your work's like sometimes. And I see a lot of guys who are very successful because they're well branded and they know how to market themselves and they say the right things, but like their work doesn't match that, but they continue to get work.
But the other part of it is, most clients won't know what their expectation is. That person's now setting it. So when they walk in the door and they see the picture, that person will just assume, the client will just assume this is how it's supposed to run.
For sure.
And it's really tough because the correction part of it doesn't happen unless it gets so bad that it's out of the way. But you're right. I mean, I love your job site security signs. Like, I'm having mine printed right now, my windscreens. Because every time I walk, and I love that you incorporate the designers and you incorporate everyone that's involved, the architects, that it's such a simple, I think the whole point of what I was trying to say was, it is so simple to do. It's $175 for a windscreen, but to send them your logo, have it ready to go. So we're doing one that's like a double gate. We're going to try and do it for every job. And it's a separate logo. Cause I like your small, like just the bird that you have on like the corner of every one of your windscreens. I'm like, I don't have that. Do I do the V? Like, what do I do? So I hit up, Nick's, the website guys and branding guys. And I'm like, I know I discarded that. They wanted me to have, like, Nick has the NS part. I was like, I don't need the VB thing. And now I'm like, I could use a VB thing, like just Vintage Build is like abbreviated. And so we're doing that. We're doing VB on both signs, and it says more home, less house. Because that's what we want to be doing, is building a home, and it's on the gates. And I got the proof back on Friday. And I'm like, I can't wait to put that on every job gate that we have. And then if we have more space, have the designers, have the architects. But God, we're 3 years in. And I feel like it's like Ben always says, IG posts, I don't have time. There's always an email to send. There's always an invoice to write. There's always a response to give to a client. And that is always the case. Yeah. And it's like vacations. There's always going to be work. But if you don't take vacation, you're never going to, be able to reset. And if you never pull away enough to be able to do that branding, the next job, the next good qualified job that ups your, go a couple rungs up the ladder, otherwise you stay at the same rung, it's crucial. And I just love what you put up there. It's a great thing. The branding's dynamite.
I appreciate the feedback. I mean, I'm always on our site supers, reminding them that how our sites present is huge, right? Like it's not only the potential clients that are potentially walking by, but we real estate agents, that have clients that are looking for building lots will drive by and they have a 5-second, first impression as they drive by your site. So how you present, both with the windscreens, how tidy the site is, there's not garbage everywhere. I appreciate the feedback because it's a big deal for me for sure. I'm glad somebody noticed.
I mean, I love the fact that it's like people can do it on IG, like we all do. We write down what we want to say, but that casual driver, what you're creating there is that brand awareness.
Yeah.
And that's what people used to do in magazines. They would, I've read magazines my entire career, and it's like the same person is on the inside cover.
Yeah.
That you're creating brand awareness that person opens that magazine and feels comfortable with you because you're in a magazine. That's because that's how it was. How do you recreate that now that magazines are dying? And I think it's that. Like, as we're having this conversation, I'm like, why am I only doing it on these two jobs when I could do it on the renovation on Lowell Street? I could put it on both driveways, and that's a great neighborhood. Or the other one that we're doing that we're hammering, it's foolish that my stuff's not up right now. Like my little sign it's like a business card when it should be a billboard.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, what was I thinking? Yeah. I'm annoyed already in this podcast that I haven't stepped it up.
Well, also customers, designers, people driving by, they like when the house is finished, they can say, yeah, they did a nice job. Maybe they don't understand the, everything that goes into that house and the full capacity of what was done. Same thing with the interior. They could say it's a nice kitchen, it's a nice bathroom. Things are executed cleanly. It's not sloppy work. But for so much of that project, they have no idea what's going on. So a clean, well-organized work site or, signage out front, maintaining a sharp-looking site, not messing up the streets and, tracking mud all over, that's all those people see for how many months, and that's all they really can base your work on. They don't understand if your frame is tight, if your insulation package is done well, if the plumber did a good job roughing things in, but they can walk in and tell if it's dirty or if it's sloppy or if the people respect what they're doing. And the finishes are the very end, but that entire process, they're judging you on like how tidy things look, and they don't understand what's going into it, and it's so important.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know what you guys think, but I think having a clean site as a new trade comes onto site sets the tone.
100%.
It sets the tone, and they recognize that, okay, I've got to up my game here. This is these guys mean business, right? So we're big on that. And John, back to your point, I think adding the architect and the interior designer sometimes to the windscreen costs us nothing, right? But the goodwill, the appreciation that I get from architects that, we are in essence investing in their promotion in certain ways. So
you're investing in their design.
Yeah.
Already. You've invested everything you have into squeezing out the very best in that. Why would, I'm doing the very little compared to what you're doing. Like I'm adding them to the IG post. It's like you promoted it, and I love it. And to Tyler's point, it's like they're checking the cleanliness, but imagine if you had the windscreens up at that crazy, color, whatever it is. I'm regretting I wrote down, why should I pick black? Like we picked black with like a gray inset, and I'm like, yours are always flashy in color. I'm like, it's almost like Tyler getting them to click through. They might drive by my sign for the last 3 months and go, that's cool. But nothing is like when I saw his post the first time. I don't know what drew me there, but I saw that windscreen. I was like, I think it was one of your stories, and you drove by.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's tight. And it made me stick around longer and then dig deep into it so much. I think I DM'd you after like a week of me looking through it. I was like, yo, I don't even know you, but we're getting together on the podcast. I'm like, because it is the amount, what you're putting into it and how you're portraying it, it can't be faked. And when there's so many people out there faking it, I wanted to tell your story or help tell it and spread it.
I appreciate it. You actually asked me where I had them made, and I was like, I'm in Canada. Like, are you going to order them from here and ship them over to?
I have a funny feeling that because I had some made for us, and I think they came from Canada.
Really?
Yeah. John, you already order them? If not, I'll send.
I got mine from, they're like $175, and I got them from like Minnesota, I think.
Oh,
I forget. I
like windscreens.com or something. And it's,
forget.
dude, they do the proof. It's easy.
Yeah.
How did you ever find that website?
I know, right? Exactly. That's even more of a punch in the face when you're like, how hard is this? And you're like,
nice hit, Tyler.
Yeah. But it's like, why am I not doing this? And the fact is, I just
and like you said, they're inexpensive. Like they're very inexpensive.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
I think I reached out to my sign people first, and they were like, "Oh, we don't do those all the time." And I'm like, I took that for, all right, it doesn't happen. And I'm like, why would I ever settle for that?
Right.
I mean, you do it. Why can't I?
Yeah. And you put privacy screen up, for security reasons anyways, right? So you may as well use that real estate to brand yourself and promote kind of. And the other thing is that doing the architect and the interior design also just sort of speaks to the integrated team, right? The collaborative team on the project. It's not just me, the builder. It's there's a collaboration involved here, which
100%.
I think is important. It's an important message in my opinion.
So once you got Hummingbird, okay. So then you decided to take on. Why did you think you needed a partnership?
It was really that next step to recognizing that, okay, I need to differentiate myself. And the first step was really towards high performance, whether you want to call it sustainable building practices, high performance, whatever. But it was recognizing that it was not an easy decision, of course, right? You're giving up part of your company to bring in these individuals, but based on the individuals, based on the vision that I had of how we could sort of differentiate ourselves in the market, I felt like these were the right individuals, and having that fully integrated carpentry capability was important for me to take that next step. And it's actually, people thought I was crazy at the time, but it's proven to be a good decision.
So like the months leading up to that, what was telling you that you couldn't execute that passive house design without this? You get me? Like there's that moment where you're like, all right, I'm gonna keep doing it my way, because there's pride involved, and then there's a moment where you're like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
Let me at least ask so and so if they want to come on board and see what the terms are.
Yeah.
Like what was that like?
So I was appreciating. I was trying to read as much as I could, and with regards to all of the building science research, the one partner that I have, Ian McFadden, he's one of those like wicked smart guys that when building science guys get together and they like talk a different language, and you're kind of looking at them like, what the hell?
Zone out.
It's like when Elon Musk talks.
Yeah. Like he's one of those guys, really, really smart guy. So, not that I'm not smart, but I think that allowed me to sort of focus. And what's been nice about the partnership is we've all got our roles, right? Like I am all front end. I'm dealing with the architects, the homeowners, the sales, the contracts, all the branding, the marketing. And then once a job becomes a job, we go into our execution phase, and that's where Ian manages that whole process. So it was, I think, contractors, I find we don't know how to scale very well. We don't know how to scale our business very well, and there's still this like romanticized idea. I still fight this with clients where they think I'm going to put on my tool belt and build the house physically myself, right? And recognizing that we as a business are exactly like any other business. And if we're going to scale it, we need to attract and retain great talent, great people. And this was sort of the right step for me based on sort of the direction, but it was not an easy decision.
Yes. So the execution phase, I guess I want to jump right into that. What was that? What's the turnover like between you going front end to turning it over to somebody else that then has to execute?
Yeah, it's hard because, and still is hard because I have the relationship with the client, right?
Yeah, and they have it with you, and they think that you're gonna be there throughout.
Exactly. They have made a decision to build a Hummingbird Hill home in large part because of me and because of our relationship and what we're going to deliver as a company. So I think it's really just setting the expectations and communicating really well at the front end to say this isn't a one-man show. This is a collaborative team effort. You're going to go and just show them this is going to be the phase, right? And you're going to actually go into an execution phase. We'll introduce the site super for their job. We'll introduce the project manager for their job. We've got we're on BIM 360. We were on CoConstruct, but now we're on BIM 360. So we introduced that whole portal to them as well. So it's trying to transition them through and getting them focused on the process of building their home and not the person that's going to build their home, if that makes any sense.
It does. And then, do you have a pre-con agreement?
I do.
That's locking you into that? Because I've struggled with this. We've been on Clubhouse here and there, and it's been a hot topic. And
yeah,
I'm giving that away right now. And I feel like the only time I'm doing it now is when I feel there's a hint that someone else is involved. And I just go, well, we do a pre-con agreement. Because A, I don't do it. And B, I don't know if I want that job. So I throw that out there. I'm like, yeah, it's $25K. If you're interested, I can forward off the information to you and let me know. So it's almost my breakup. Like, yeah. So it's not on me, it's on them. So what's yours structured like?
Yeah, we do an MOU, not a formal agreement, and so it's basically because we are trying to we're trying to promote a more integrated project delivery versus kind of your siloed approach that I think is flawed personally between kind of architecture, engineering, or architecture, design, engineering, and then construction. So I'm actually out there saying, get me in earlier, right? Like let's get there. Now that we do the modeling for the panels, we want to be involved earlier, which you're right. I mean, it is more work, but we find during the execution phase, we're much more efficient, right? Like shovel goes in the ground. I want to be focused on execution. I don't want to still be dicking around with, we're still changing the design or we're not sure what to do here or there. So we do an MOU, pre-construction sort of agreement, get the deposit, and then float that through into the construction phase.
And is that deposit non-refundable, or is that get given back during? I've heard it a bunch of different ways.
I know.
I only throw it out there as a scare tactic.
Yeah, you're right. For the right for the client that you potentially don't want to have, you make it non-refundable. But no, typically we apply the deposit against the project management fees if the project becomes a project. If it doesn't become a project, then it's non-refundable and we keep it just to compensate for the time and efforts that's been put in.
So you said you call it MOU?
MLU.
Yeah.
MLU?
MOU, memo of understanding. It's just like a legal letter, but it's not binding.
I think we call it a LOI, letter of intent.
Yeah, so probably similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the Canadian version.
Yeah, we're catching up.
So when you want to get in early, how do people want to trust you in order to give up, let's say, or sign on with you when most architects are gonna pitch the whole "we're gonna bid this out" process?
Yeah.
How do you counteract that?
It's really about actually informing the architects and making the architects recognize. I personally think the way it's traditionally done is flawed, and it's the reason behind a lot of the issues that we deal with. Right? When you've got an architect that designs in a vacuum. Not to say that we want to design, but when they're designing in a vacuum, and then you've got engineering, and then that, depending on the degree of professionalism with the architecture firm. A lot of the firms we're dealing with, they don't even overlay mechanical onto structural and architecture drawings, right? So we're figuring out.
I thought that was our job.
Yeah. So I know. It's like, yeah.
That's the best. That was the best reaction to
that. So when back to those lunch and learns, I do lunch and learns virtually now with architects talking about the advantage of getting us. I don't want to have anything to do with the design, but we're now building models for the panels. We build all of our builds digitally on Revit first. So being involved at the design stage, we can have that voice around constructability. We can start to have, some costing parameters, because there's nothing worse. I'm sure you guys have all had it where they've spent months designing, engineering, interior design, get to us for the costing exercise to realize they're like $700,000 more than they expected to spend. And everyone's looking at each other like, okay, now what?
The architects want us to be the bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes, not all times.
Yeah.
Not the architects I work with.
Yeah. Some of them are great, right? And we're finding the architects that we're working with want to have us at the table. To your point, John, about trust, that's the key, right? Is how do you develop trust? And it's really, for me, it's about showing them our process and how transparent it is, but B, our process and how much control we put back in their hands through this process, right? And then, of course, you're back to your reputation and your branding and all that comes into play for sure. We're finding it's a much better process when we can be involved. Build the models now is a game changer for us because we can run clash detections. We can figure out all the things that one could argue an architectural firm should be doing, but a lot of them aren't, right?
True. So I guess this is where I get hung up, and I'm going to walk you through it, and you guys can dissect it. Is that I want it to be an intimate process. So for me to gain a potential client's trust, let's say I don't want to jump ahead, but let's say they know you. Maybe it's a referral. Let's just start there. So they know of you. They know your brand. They're not just cold calling you, and then I want to meet with them, do that initial consultation. It's free, but I want to show value. I don't want it to be like, hey, here's my contract, like have it folded up my back pocket so they can try and sign it by the end of it. But it's more like I also want to finish that meeting with setting the next one up. So it's like, how do I do this? And then I find myself, I can juggle a few of those and have no problem, but I don't ever want those people to make a commitment with money. I want them to make a commitment with trust and wanting to be involved with this process in me. And I find that the only time I put the pre-construction agreement out there is when I don't feel like it's reciprocating back and forth. Like I'm putting it out there. Like I could be other places. If you see social media, that we're doing X, Y, Z. So I feel like I need to be the one implementing that trust factor and making it intimate without that contract. And I know it's flawed. I'm trying to figure out from everyone else here, like what makes sense? What part do I incorporate it? Like, is it after? I know Nick is probably way more rigid than I am, and I get it.
I don't know if I should take that as a compliment or as an insult. I'm pretty flexible.
Well, okay, hold on. But the flip side of that is I'm giving away my time, my knowledge to someone that may not commit. Good.
Fair, but I feel like you almost answer your own question in the sense that you say that you need to provide value, but you don't want to have a contract in your back pocket to sign that day. That's not how we approach it. I mean, we don't say, hey, yeah, you're interested in building a $2 million house? Sure, no problem. Sign this $25,000 agreement and we'll go from there. It's, no, let's meet. Let's talk. Let's get to know it. I want to see the site if they have a site, or let's meet and talk about the process. What are you looking to do? Is there an architect? You get to know them and you do your whole, I'm going to call it a spiel, right? Like you're selling yourself and you're getting to know each other and figure out if it's a good fit. And John, you're able to look at a project and give them some sort of ballpark. Like, yeah, we want to build a an 8,000 square foot house. This is what we're thinking. These are the finishes. All right, yeah. I mean, based on what I've done, that's a $3.5 million project.
So when does that happen? Give me that process. Like, you've met once.
That could happen meeting one. I mean, for us, I try to talk about money immediately.
Do they have design though?
Not necessarily.
So I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out is, so I do all that.
Right. So at that point, we've done it both ways, where they have an architect, and then if they have an architect, it tends to be like maybe a smidge more difficult to get that pre-construction agreement, because they feel as though they're already committed to an architect and they're going through the motion. So we kind of have to work with the architect to sell on,
within that process.
Well, just get them on board with like, hey, we want to be an asset to you, the architect. So as you're designing, we're price checking things. So we're both walking down the same street, not on different streets.
So have you reached out to that architect, or are you having them, the potential client, connect you guys? Aaron, jump in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, typically the architect's involved in one of those initial I've never been in a position where they're working with an architect and then the homeowner calls the builder without involving the architect.
Yeah. This is why I focus my efforts actually on discussing the integrated process with an architect more than I do anybody, right? And getting them to understand the concept of, design, bid, build is like got so many issues with it that end up, everyone pointing their fingers at each other, and not a great experience for the client. When I have an architect that agrees that having a construction perspective involved, not at the schematic design stage, but at some point, where you need some parameters around costing, around constructability, around options, having an idea about budgets, you integrate as part of the team. And I think I don't know about you guys, but I would say 80% of the clients that we build for have actually come through and been qualified by the architect.
Yeah.
I'm not coming to me first, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
So getting the architects to understand the benefits for them to integrating construction and engineering as part of this process and integrating a team, for us has been great. It's been really good.
So when do you incorporate in your agreement? How early on? Like, break it down for me. In my process, where did I go wrong?
Yeah, we
do.
do.
I want to know.
Yeah, so we do that MOU as a pre-construction sort of agreement. We have an industry standard here in Ontario called a CCDC, where it applies to all construction projects. That contract has to reference, your architectural drawings, your mechanical drawings, your structural, your interior. So I have to have those available to be able to reference them directly into that contract. That happens kind of at the before it goes in for permits, is when we put the formal contract in place in front of them.
Okay, so you are having a couple meetings
for sure
before you get any money involved. You're putting some time.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's in our industry. I don't know how you don't, right? Like,
agreed. That's where I get hung up. Is that I get it. Like right now, let's just take it back. I have a project that was referred to me by two people, and I like it a lot. I dig it. The architect has some schematics. I kind of went through it, and with lumber and obviously the windows are what catch me off. Is like, hey, this is going to be above standard. So what I've come up with in my head, which we haven't done. Usually I would just send them, hey, here's a rough budget. I probably took maybe a couple hours to go through it and just comb it. So I took an old project, changed the letterhead or whatever, and then just kind of made sure that all the numbers fit with today, what I'm paying for today. And then on this one in particular, I sent it to the lumber company because of the schematics and said, hey, give me pricing on elevates because windows and lumber are going crazy. I wanted to see if those numbers fit with my schedule values. So then the epiphany I had over the weekend is, which I've been doing in my spreadsheet, but I haven't been giving it away, is I'm going to put a column and say, instead of like, I know Reisinger told us he does good, better, best. I'm going to take the column of what I'm projecting for this project, which is a projection, and then the left column, I'm going to put the average of the last 3 homes, that value. So that way, when they see it, like there's 2 products right now that I really want. And I don't think I have the project enough to be able to say, hey, we should get involved in an agreement. So I want Nick's dying to say something. But it's
no, I mean, I'm in a similar position, and because you're thinking that there's probably a few other people.
Well, I mean, one, they're saying, hey, the architect wants to send out the bid, and I've already drafted a whole email saying I think that's a poor process, but I don't know how to back that up yet. So I want to go.
That's tough because you're putting yourself not on the architect's side.
I'm on an island.
Right. So we all talk about how we don't bid work, but at the same time, I'm sure that all 4 of us have been in a position and been presented with a project that said, "Screw it, I'll bid this because it's worth it." We had one come in today. I'm like, yeah, I get it, but if the client wants to bid it, that's a job I'd spend 3 weeks bidding because I want that.
Right.
But as far as knowing when to introduce it, it just you can bring value. You can spend 4 hours and put your preliminary estimate together and say, this is just how I see. Like, you're way early. This is how I see the project unfolding. That's what we just did with a smaller project. We went through, spent 4 hours with it. This is how I see the project unfolding. I know it's over your budget. Here's areas that we could possibly value engineer, and this is where I think we could get down to. But I've already communicated prior to giving them that, like in the first meeting, I've walked them through like, hey, we'll totally down to, we're getting to meet each other today. Next steps is going to be, talking about, we'll get some sort of preliminary estimate put together, just how we see this unfolding. But from there, what I suggest is that we get involved. We take a retainer and we get involved, and we're the pricing asset to the business, this project. We are going to be an asset to you as the client and the asset to the architect as a client, because what that will allow us to do is, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but as design is unfolding, we're pricing, and the client always feels as though that the design is you get the reins. Like ultimately, John, you said it earlier. It's like we end up being the bad guy because we price something higher than they expected.
We bring reality, which
right
is
where
price.
It's like if you're going through the whole design process and Johnny's holding the reins, that ultimately you have the control of as to whether or not that design takes a hard left at the end and then throws the budget out of the window, and then you come in the wrong. So
I don't want to be involved in that process. Out
What
of
process?
all the things in this entire thing, I don't want to be the money guy that early on pricing stuff, because I don't want to burn out. I don't want to put my subs through the fatigue of having to price sets. So go ahead.
But you're not necessarily getting your subs involved yet. So I look at it like the way I explain it is, if I get an SD set, so we're like 30% designed, we're going to spend 30% effort towards that. So we're going to go through, do our takeoffs. All right, well, you got, 500 square feet of tile that needs to be waterproofed. It's cost me $25 a square foot for material, waterproofing install. All right, I'll throw that. At this point, you're doing, at least for us, we're doing our takeoffs and we're putting numbers in there. So it's computing something out. When we get further along with design, like to a 75% set, that's when we get a little bit more effort, and then we're pricing. We're pricing with vendors and we're pricing with trades, because at 75%, if the budget is on track and the client, you're meeting along these points, like they're delivering a 30% set, you're delivering a 30% budget. So the client is, at this point, everyone's on the same page. So when you get to 75%, getting your sub involved, you're not risking wasting their time, because the job is getting more and more committed and more of a reality for you.
Yeah, but the other part of that is I point blank in that first meeting say, having a sub bid something right now, it's not a real project.
That's fine.
No matter how, because my point is if you add fluff to every one of those line items, that project may not be feasible. And the reality of that product, so I hate that. Nothing against it, Nick. Not you at all. I hate that entire thing, because it's you're almost coaxing somebody along to get involved, so that way they have something committed the same way they have the architect, where now you're committed just on time alone, and that they're going to go with you. I've said to clients before, I'm not going to bid this out. Like to any of them, I said, I'm not going to bid it out, because the odds of it being a real number from any of my subs, because I know how busy I am and I know how busy they are, that they're just going to throw crap at it. And if I throw enough crap at the wall, then the number 15, 10, 50, whatever, 20% float, that product's not doable. So for us to get
what's
an
the
accurate
difference
number,
what's the difference between pricing it and not getting a real number from your sub than not bidding it and going into the build? You're going to end up spending that money anyway.
No, I'm going to use past products that I have that are going to show me
exactly. But that puts your subs into, they have to back into a number.
No, I'm not committing to that number either. I'm going to find out if the feasibility study works that early. So what I was trying to get at before was, I'm going to put together this budget. Is what I'm sending out tomorrow to both the people. One's at Patrick Ahern house, and the other one, which they went against Patrick and my architect. And I trying to figure out, if I do the ballpark number, Nick and Aaron, everybody, is that if I put the ballpark number together, what validates that number?
Experience.
To anyone, to someone that's reading that for the first time, the architect or whatever. So if I take the last 3 builds and take an average of those, and I add that column to the bid and go, hey, you know our product, you know what you've seen, the last 3 addresses that are in town, this is what the average of those cost, and this is where I think yours is going to come in. If we're not within 10% or 15% of your budget, then we need to cut right now. Either you need to cut design or scope.
That's your initial estimate, though.
That's all I'm doing, and they're committing.
That's great, but they don't. But that's not always that isn't going to always be the case. They may say that's.
I also feel like that's when they know who you are and your work. Like at that point, they're kind of ensuring that you line up budget wise, but they kind of also already want you to do the job.
No, they may not want it at all. If it doesn't line up, I would rather know that from past numbers than to go down the road of getting all these bids that are fictitious in reality to what's going to happen long term. I'm telling them straight out it's fictitious. I'm not going to lead them along and go, hey, I've sent this out for pricing. I've done square footages. I've done all this, because no one really puts that legwork in. They're just billing for it, because you're getting money from them to see if they're going to commit to you.
Yeah. What we're actually planning on doing is changing this model a little bit and changing the mindset. Because I would guess if you ask a lot of architects, they view construction firms as a necessary evil, right? It's like they just need to price the job and do what I have on the drawings. But if you flip that mindset with architects so that they view you as a valued partner in this process, we've got a couple of people in the office that I was saying build out those BIM models. We've actually got an architect that's very interested in doing this with us, where of course the client goes out, they do their due diligence on builders, they meet with, guys like you and I, John, and hopefully come to the conclusion they're going to build with us. Now I plant a BIM modeler with the architect, so that as the design sort of develops, we're actually building the model. And what you can do with that technology is, as that model gets built, you're actually getting real-time cost and costing. That's all exactly what you're saying, John. It's based on our previous costs for each of the different line items, but the technology is there that you can build this, get costing, which actually means you turn a very reactive process, which is what it exists today, and you make it proactive, so that you can design it sort of to a budget if that's what the client wants. If they're $2 million construction budget and you've got to make some decisions on, a slate roof versus a standing seam roof versus an asphalt roof, all of a sudden you can not only build the model and have the real-time cost estimating, but you actually can build the model and show them visually the difference between those 3 roof systems, so that they can make a decision either based on design or on budget.
Or both. You can show them what budget would cost, or for aesthetic, it's really not about the numbers. It's really about what they want to do, and you're giving them all the tools. That's
when the rubber hits the road, right? Like, what's more important here, the design aesthetic or the budget, right?
Yep. Because you're showing them both, what will work and then what your dreams will give you.
100%. But what I think personally is, we're flipping the value proposition of what we deliver as construction firms and as builders for the architects. And we're integrating ourselves in that process so that by the time you're done that whole process, you're not in that predicament where an architect's tendered it to 3 different builders and you've got about 60% of the information and it's just going to be a shit show, right?
Yeah.
Through the whole build. That's what we're trying to do and trying to move towards. We've got the Revit stuff down. The technology is amazing. Yeah.
I mean, they have to, and that's the same thing. They have to hire you or know that they want you to build that project prior to any of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing that for free.
I mean, I also think that there's no, like, at that point, there's almost no way to tell what the cost of you versus somebody else, because you're using software and you have all of these details. Even if there was a full like plan set at that point to send out, it's 2 different ways of pricing things. There's different things accounted for and everything else. Like, it comes down to who do you want to build your project. It's so hard to say, well, look, his number is this for this house, and they looked at it this way, and contractor B's number is this for this house, where they're just it doesn't matter the scale of the project. They're 2 different things. And I think the goal for you, for me, for John, for Nick would be to have those customers come to you and hire you to execute the work the way that you do, and understand that the cost of that job is going to be the cost of the job.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to take the opportunity to educate them, because that window of uncertainty is small, but it's major. Yeah. If that makes any sense, is that when you do, like, I'm being honest with you, a week and a half ago, I met with a couple and they're super cool. And I saw the designs. It's funny, like, it's little hints. We're like, hey, send the schematics over. And they're like, we'll just go over them when we're on the site. So it's like, all right, so maybe they don't have them yet, or they don't want to release them. So even though I've been referred by 2 other people, a designer and a client, they know our product, they get it, there's still some hesitation. You get me? Like, you have to read between the lines. It's like my PM the other day. I go, hey, can you put that change order together for humidity? And he looks at me the wrong way, and I'm like, did you give it to him? Or did they know it's going to be a change? Like, you have to read between the lines. Like, he paused. But it's the same thing. I was like, they didn't have the design. And I'm like, all right, so we get there, we walk it. They were all excited. Like, I pulled up, and I was like 6 minutes early, and she shot out the front door. And I was like, all right, so I'm crazy, I know. But it's all these little moments that I'm either putting a check on one side of the line, or I'm checking off the other side of the line, because I can't.
But I also think it's important to note, like, there's going to be that type of client that's okay with getting a rough idea and then going from there. And, the other side of it, because, yes, we've been in that position too, where we've gotten that preliminary estimate and we're good to go. Or, it's, hey, from here, we're good. That pre-construction agreement is also, it's for pricing, it's for scheduling, it's for feasibility, constructability. It's being part of the meetings with the architect.
Those are all trigger words. What does that mean?
It means that
I'm writing mine right now, and I read through what someone else gave me, and it's all fluff.
I can send you what we have, but
what you just said, scheduling. What are you scheduling? You putting a schedule together?
You're putting a schedule. Yeah.
So you're printing off one that you had that's going to take you 10 minutes.
No,
between us, we're in the nest. We're in friendly nest.
I know we're in the every job's different. I mean,
it's close. I mean, how long is it going to take you to put the schedule together?
I get it, but the point is that as the trigger here is that as the design unfolds further and becomes more detailed, our schedule and our budget becomes more detailed. And the reason that we do that, for that particular client, is because they want to understand. They want to see those micro changes. So yes, at the end of the day,
they don't really know, though, do they?
From my experience, as limited as that might be, yes, that's what they want to see. They want us to see. They want to see the work go into it to make sure that
is that what they think they need to see to validate the money they've spent on the pre-con agreement?
Yeah,
that's never been in question. The money.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, do you guys use cost plus method?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's the conversation I have with clients always, is whether I buy the wood or builder B or builder C buys the wood, it's the same cost.
Right.
We have a process that's fully transparent to them. They're going to see all of those costs. So really what they are comparing is our percent as a builder versus builder B and builder C, right? And then the conversation switches, because usually we're between 1%, maybe 2% difference.
It's a close race. Yeah.
It's always close, right? And so once you start to make them realize that that's actually what you're assessing right now, in addition to, of course, the quality, but if you've been referred by the architect, a lot of that's been pre-qualified. And then the conversation switches to the process that you have that shows them the transparency and the control that they have to be able to manage the costs, right? If they have a specific budget in mind, it's less about, okay, what's the cost per square foot, or how much do you charge per square foot? And it's more about, okay, this is really what the drivers are to your costs and your budget. And you have the control we have a process where we sort of provide them the control to manage it to a budget if that's what they want to do.
You're right. I think that's the key part, is that, Nick, I'm not saying you're conforming to the machine, but I want to be able to kick out a number to them, and then I want to walk through the design with them and go, hey, what is it that you guys want here? I want to learn more about this, but I don't want it to be about numbers.
Yeah.
And I know it's counterintuitive.
And that's part of, I mean, it's not all about the cost.
You're showing value through what? Your pre-con and your value is brought to them by what? By schedule, showing them.
No, that's the paperwork that comes along with it. That's
what you described to me. That's all I know with your system.
We're specifically talking about the budget side of it. The value is being part of the design process, and being part of the design process is making sure that they're getting what they want. That we're not leaving anything on the table. That if they've communicated a $2 million budget and they can't afford everything that they want, we're still looking at it. All right, well, it's $2.2 million. So is that extra $200,000 within reach for us to get 100% of what you're looking for?
But I think the model is, do you show them what $2 million gets them?
Of course. We look at it, if we're pricing a job and there's a target budget in mind, we're going to hit that. We're going to get to that number. But before we get to that target $2 million, we'll just use as an example, we're going to price it out as exactly how the design has unfolded, and that might be $2.8 million. And we're going to communicate that just so they understand that, hey, we're 2.8. This is how we would get down to $2 million. And usually,
and you got to that by having it sent out for pricing.
Not all the time. No, it depends on how far. It depends on how detailed the drawings are. If the details, if we're only at, again, like a 30% set, then we're putting less effort into it. We're looking at a big picture, like, over. We're doing one right now, and what it came down to is the house was just too big. We had to cut square footage in order for us to drive that number down. And most of the time we're getting, column A, that's column A and column B, and then we do a column C where it's, hey, 2.8 million gets 100% of what you want, 2 million gets you 65% of the way there. But if we were at 2.2, you're actually at 95%. That last 5% is really what's driving that cost way up. And if we just scale back that, so we're bringing to the table value in the sense that they don't ever feel as though they didn't know what was within reach, whether that's financial reach, whether that's schedule reach, or scope reach. But the value is the builder being involved in that design, being in those meetings, being able to, when they talk about, hey, we want to do a wide open ceiling here, and this is what we're thinking. John, you can be like, well, we just did that at our Oasis project, and that's going to require steel. Just, making sure that, that someone that's done it before can comment on it, and it's not just, they're not just throwing things at the wall in hoping that it fits within the budget, where it's, that might trigger you to say, hey, listen, that's not what I was considering in this project. Is, we weren't thinking superstructure, we weren't thinking structural steel, but, we can do it, but we just have to be cognizant of the fact that that can potentially drive the cost.
Do you guys, does any of you guys do a tender? Do you guys participate in tenders or no?
Like a goaltender? I don't play goalie. I play defense. What is it?
Where the architects tender the drawings to 3 builders.
That's almost
I think
the
it's pretty
majority of what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've gotten a lot of our projects where clients come to us and they want us to do the design as well. And then I'm not a design build firm, so we'll kind of acquire the architect that we like to use and kind of go that route. That's why one of those projects came to us that way. We offered up 2 architects. They went with one of them. One of them I don't have an amazing relationship with, which I'd love to, Hourihan. So I'm like, how do I get ahead of it and show value without? That's what I'm saying. Like it's gone out to now it's in design, and it's like I know that they have their own Rolodex of builders, and I'm like, I know I'm doing one with them, but I'm not in the top 5. Let's say I'm not in their top 5 videos that they like to watch on YouTube. So it's like, how do I get there? And I want to show that by going, hey, this is what I think this is going to cost. And how I show that is this is that spreadsheet, and this is what the 5 last builds are, similar square footage, similar details you sent. So in that initial meeting, I'll ask for, when I walk it, it's almost no budget. It's nothing a big pitch from me. I'm really trying to get a lay of the land, trying to understand, why'd you guys buy this property? You've already committed to that, and it shouldn't be designed, and then you dilute the builder because the design's already done. And it's like trying to figure out what's important to you.
Right.
And then see if they want to ask about process, see if they want to ask about anything. And it's tough. And I just feel like I can put together that budget in probably 3 hours, meaning put it together and then put together the line item next to it that says it's 300 line items that show an average of the last 3 houses. And I think that's what gives clarity to that and goes, all right, you've already committed to this design. Both these products we're talking about have already committed to an architect and are doing that off reservation without any builder involved. But they're still talking with me in the meantime. And I'm like, 15 years ago, I still got this. I own that. That's my build. I'm putting a sign out front. And the reality of it is it's not the case. So I'm like, how do I stay like Swingers, the movie? Like, when do I reach out again? Is it every 3 days? Is it day too early? Is 5 days too late? And trying to keep it on and want to be a resource. And there's other projects where it's yours. Like, hey, here's the designer. They sign that designer up. And that's what we've been doing a lot of is that, hey, we don't sign a pre-construction agreement. If it's design, if it's renovation, here's an architect, here's a designer. Do that, and then they'll both let me know when they're ready, and then we'll go. So I guess I'm running on a bunch of different ideas, but I'm not rebelling against you, Nick. It's just that process, and that's why I probably haven't done a pre-construction agreement because I know how volatile pricing. I just got a call yesterday that copper's gone up, and that electrical, a roll of 14 too went from $50 to $106.
Yeah,
like the pricing I gave them, lumber prices are good for 10 days max. Like,
but let's remove that for a second. What about everything else that you're doing?
That's a huge piece, though.
No, I'm not. I'm saying the thing that you seem to be caught up on is the value of providing pricing. Forget the pricing. What about your?
So I've done this process, Nick. Just to give everyone that's listening a kind of heads up. I've done this. I've done your road. I get it, and I find that it burns more time and gives a false sense of comfort and relationship that people are more aggravated at the end of it, depending on how it comes out, because they've put their faith in you to make this happen when you want to blame the design and it's not you. And then you've done 6 months of pre-con that you've been paid $10,000 for. But the reality is I could have made a better connection with somebody. I'm saying me, because I only know me, with someone that if I didn't do that agreement, didn't commit to them with that money and done that, and I could have met 2 other clients that were perfect. That's what I'm trying to vet out, not how to close that person with that agreement. I want to know what's the best use of my time and how to vet that.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I guess, there's still a lot that goes into vetting that process and vetting. And if, you're rather than doing it for free, you should be paid for your time. I mean, if we're talking business, I mean, it's, just strict business, right? Forget the client relationship side of it. and or what the value is. It's the value is what you bring to the table. The flip side is that you're making money doing it. It's not to get them to close and do the project. It's not about that. It's about making your value. You should be covered for the time that you're putting into it, and feel as though you're not taken advantage of. So it could be a great experience all the way through, and at the very end things don't work out, and it's like and that situation that stings. It's like, man, I've put all this time into it, and everything was going well, and you know what, they decided that they don't want to do the job. And whether it was blamed on putting the faith in the builder, or they just chose to not work with you for whatever reason. It's like all of that time, in my opinion, it should, like, you should be paid for that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, the reason I do it is because I know that everything's so price driven, and I don't want to waste my time. I'm basically trying to get rid of the tire kickers up front, where, I mean, even for example, there was 3 jobs recently that came up that there was no design involved. It was basically ripping stuff out, putting it back in place. And I couldn't use that angle to be like, hey, bring us in, we'll sort out the design, we'll handle all of that, and we'll price the job at the same time. So we couldn't do that. All 3 jobs, I sent them a line item budget from John's spreadsheet, which, like, full disclosure, so I'm not trying to hide any sort of pricing from them.
God, he didn't get him, did he?
No, not a single one. And, dude, one lady responded right away. This was, we're not on the same page as far as pricing goes. We didn't think that it would be this much. And they were literally, their budget was 1/3 of what I gave them. So that was like somebody that I should have screened out beforehand. But I had told her how we price things. She was fine with it. And then I was like, well, let me develop a quick budget for you. So that was like the second step in the process. Got burnt that time. The second time, the lady, it was a referral from her daughter, who I guess knows us or has seen our work, follows us or whatever it may be. She's like, you came highly recommended. We tried to get hold of somebody else. Contractors aren't really returning her phone calls. Explained to them how I work. I was like, at this point, I'm not going to bring these subs out, but I'm going to get you a budget. Send her a line item budget. No response. Like a week later, follow-up email, hey, just checking that you got, like, my budget. And again, through this budget, like, it's full line. Nobody asked for that, but I'm like, I'm not trying to hide anything as far as pricing goes. Here's what the hardwood flooring costs. Like, just so you have an idea. And this budget, like, it's, I touched base with a couple of subs and ran some things by them, but it could change. But I also feel that it's pretty realistic. And then, follow up with her, hey, did you receive that? And then, like, 2 days later, yeah, we got it, but a couple of line items seemed high, so we want to get a second price. And then the third one was the same thing. It was, like, pretty straightforward, and no response. Sent her, like, a line item budget, and she's like, oh, we're still trying to figure out what we're trying to do. And for me, that was like 3 jobs right off the bat that I went and looked at, which I typically don't do, and then sat down and typed up a line item budget for, and an email, which, like, at the end of the day, it was probably 4 hours, 5 hours, which it's like, I know that's part of the game, but for me, in the way I'm structured, I don't have time. Like, I have to make money by having the tools on and being on the job, and that stuff just doesn't make me money. So I just want to weed out those people from the get-go, where it's like, hey, you want to hire us because you want to hire us. I'll help provide you a budget, but I'm kind of trusting that you're not, like, I give you a line item budget, that you're just not going to not respond to my email and be like, well, it was high. Well, call me up. Like, hey, the hardwood number seemed higher than I thought. Well, yeah, hardwood's like double from what I paid for it last year. Let's have a conversation, like, not ghost on me and then tell me a few line items seemed high. Where are you getting that information from? Like, where's your a few, like, what do you have, like, costing from getting this job priced out 5-6 times? Or, like, do you have a past career in this industry, like, to understand what goes into my costing and why it is that way? And for me, that's why I do it, to kind of preserve my time and save my time, and just not waste my time.
Exactly.
But I don't know. I'm not necessarily, I think that at the end of the day, if somebody hires me from the get-go to design, bid, price, budget their job, and then execute, I do believe we're bringing value in that overall process, because I think at the end of the day, they won't get that finished product without or with anyone else that's doing that. And I'm not like being arrogant. I know what we can do and the control that we have and the scale that we have, and it's going to be tough for them to do that. So I think that that's how I'm bringing value, but I'm not necessarily, it's selfishly, I'm trying to kind of save my own ass and save my own time, because I know what costs me money and where I make money.
Exactly. But if you had signed them up for an agreement after like the second meeting of just going through the motions, signing them up for $5,000, and then now it's on your plate as an obligation and it's a burden for you. Like, as soon as you receive money, it's a burden on you. It's on my conscience. It's blah, blah, blah. And then it's a 1.5-month process of you doing this. The result would have been the same. Am I wrong?
No, potentially. I also, like, I wouldn't sign somebody up for that without having like a loose budget in place. So I do kind of start throwing numbers out there, and then like, it is slow. I'm not necessarily not giving them any sort of budgeting beforehand. But I think that at that, like, if I signed somebody up for something and I knew that my numbers were way off, or I gave them a low number and then we came in at a higher number, hey, what's the conversation? Like, this one job, you wanted a herringbone oak floor, and like, okay, well, it's more than you thought. You can't do herringbone in that room, so let's sort out other things. But at the end of the day, I feel like if somebody comes to us and hires us for what we do, they'll understand the cost associated with that, and then we'll make that project work however we have to. The other thing for me is that, like, I'm fine investing my time in that up front, because I only need to do a few jobs a year. So that, like, locks me in, keeps my schedule. And then I'm not doing that with every single customer who comes to me. It's only customers who I really feel are a good fit, that we're a very good chance of doing the job. And there has been maybe one or two people that designs fell through and we just couldn't hit their budget. And looking back at it, I was unrealistic with my numbers in the first place. And I probably, like Tyler, you said, locked myself into a situation that I couldn't get out of, but I shouldn't have ever even signed them up for that design in the first place.
So Aaron, we'll get back to you in a second, but if so you gave that potential client a ballpark budget, then they came back to you and said, we went down the road where people bail. What about the people that come back to you and go, yeah, it's pretty close? Now you sign them up.
Yeah,
is that how it would
typically
go?
What usually ends up happening is like, hey, I mean, even so, that garage gym, right? Like, that design wasn't that design when they first came to us. It's how much money do you want to spend on this space? And like, the number that we wound up at was like twice what we initially said, because I was like, I don't know what you guys want to do. It's a garage right now. You say you want a home gym, but we don't have anything. I don't know your aesthetic. I don't know anything. I could do it for this much. Like, that would get you a really nice home gym. In my head, I had no clue that that's what they wanted for a home gym. So then when I start meeting them, and like, at this point, it's like, they're serious about me. I came referred. They knew my work. They had looked into things. They had called a couple of customers. So at that point, I was fine signing up with a design contract with them, and was like, but still understand that this number, there's nothing on paper right now. So that number doesn't really mean anything. But what we did is we did like one round of design, and then we priced it, and then he added stuff, and I was like, it's going to be this much more. And by the end of the day, like, they said, hey, this is more than we thought it was going to be, but we understand what we're going to get. It's going to be nice. we finished the job, and he's like, I knew it was going to be nice. I didn't know it was going to be this nice. So like I left money on the table at that point, right? But it's not like a hard, distinct line in the sand where I have this process and it's the same process for every customer. Like, I'm only going to sign somebody up for a design contract if I truly believe that we can do that job. And like, I want to do that job and I like the customers. I'm not just going to sign them up to like lock them in and lock a job on my schedule. It's like, hey, if you guys are serious, you want to hire me, then you can give me a deposit towards the job and we'll start working on the job and designing the job and all the pre-construction stuff. And we'll have to sort out all those details, but it's not that process. It's not like it's the same exact thing for every single customer, and I could hand this sheet of paper over to anyone and they could follow that. It's based on a lot of gut reactions, a lot of instinct,
a lot of pauses and a lot of looking down and a lot of things that kind of, I'm with you 100%.
Like a lot of tailoring that to each customer. And like, honestly, these people who came to me, I didn't have anything that I could offer to like be like, hey, are you guys going to hire me or are you just pricing this out? And like told them I don't price jobs out and then like send them pricing. And then sure enough, we're going to price this job, which like, I don't care. You can price the job out. I know I'm going to be more money but I also know that like, so when you go and get somebody and he's pricing your floor, it's not the floor guy that I'm using. Like, I'm bringing somebody in from another state because I want like you to have a really nice floor, and you just have to know what you're getting. And at that point, I think that if you're not hiring me to do this job, maybe it is too much money and you don't need to pay that, but you also don't want that level of execution because you won't get it if you pay less.
But I think the other part, I mean, what helps in what my process is that I put that ballpark budget together and put it on there, and we're cost plus. So if you don't use that line item, it goes back into the piggy bank. So it's not like with the lump sum, which I think you'd be crazy to use right now with the fluctuation in numbers, unless you put a massive amount of float on it. But that's a great asset there, is that, hey, we're open book, we're transparent. And if you don't use it, whatever. And then at the same time, as we go through it, I tell clients, I'm going to bid out the demolition, the excavation, all that stuff with my 3 core people. We have 3 to 6 people. We'll bid it out with those guys. I know who I love. I'm going to give them last call on that. I'm going to have 2 guys look at it. I know what the numbers are on the budget. If it looks great, we'll buy it down. If not, it might be a little bit more depending on what soil we hit, blah, blah. The limit of what's going to go wrong is through the dig for a new house, for me. Because after that, it's really just execution. And if numbers go crazy like copper for electrical went up, then, I'd let them know as soon as I got that phone call, But it's like, I can really gauge that and not really have to worry about it. So and then I can present to them, hey, we're doing this. This is asphalt. This will hit your number. Here's a rendering of what it looked like. Do you want to go with that or not? And I get it. It's more of an organic process. And I think that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing structured. And I know to grow a company, it needs to have some sort of a structure, because otherwise I'm going to do it all the time. And that's why we've kicked more towards architects, because if I'm hand drawing, or if I know the detail in my head for that pigeon return or whatever it is, then I can never delegate that. And that's where it's been my biggest flaw for the last 2 years, is in how do you do that? So we've made aggressive movements to, get more things on paper. So that's the best I've done in the last 2 years.
I think the challenge from my perspective, big picture, is we're still in a process that's forcing us to react constantly, right? And it's, for me, the fact that architecture is its own silo, interior design is its own silo, engineering is its own silo, and construction, with that process, we're always kind of reacting to the situation, right? There isn't this proactive approach, and I think that's why we're looking at trying to get sort of earlier on into the process, so that we can be part of it from the beginning, cost it properly, meet client objectives. You think about when the design has gone through the whole process on its own, it's like an information dump, right? You're just like given the drawings and you're trying to react now. through that entire process, which is, for me, it's a flawed process. So that's why we're looking at, and these are great conversations, and we're not going to find an easy answer, because I believe personally, because we're dealing with a flawed process that we're trying to change. And I think it's not easy, but I think it's part of the solution.
Aaron, do you find that I love the reach out with architects. What are you finding that these architects are giving you for the first round of a project? Are they giving you a brand new home? Are they giving you that, mudroom renovation to get their feet wet with you?
Like a new architect that we haven't worked with?
Like the one that you've kind of done a lunch date with, or whatever you call it, and just try and lunch in. And then they want to try you out, but they also, like, I've had feedback from an architect that says, we just don't have that in-depth of a relationship to be able to give you a new house.
Yeah. A lot of the times you're right. It's maybe a smaller project. A lot of the times the clients will, again, back to the marketing piece, and the reputation, the clients will bring our name up to that architect. So there's that aspect to it as well. But yeah, everyone's different. Architects, especially in your local area, I'm sure you know this, they talk to each other, right? The different architectural firms, I find, have a communication line with each other. So they know who the good builders are, who are not good, as well.
Yeah, it definitely is a flawed system for sure. And I think even with your process, like you said, if you can get that modeling and kind of costing done live, basically, like as the architect is designing, and they can make those changes so that it is more proactive and not reactive, that would be huge. That would be huge, even just like for customers saying, well, we want to do it this way, but we also want you to price it this way, where it's like, I don't want to price it $5. But if it's that simple that you can make those adjustments on the fly and have that database of information, that would be huge. But at the same time, I think that's still a starting point, right? Once that construction begins, it's still, our job is reactive at that point.
Yeah.
It's managing the budget at that point, like whether your percentage is different than the next guy or you guys are the same percentage, it still comes down to managing that budget, because you can still be more money because you didn't manage the budget properly, you didn't manage subs properly, change orders properly, finishes properly, and you didn't manage that budget. And like, well, yeah, now, I'm $700,000 more than we thought we were going to be. Or the guy who has a lower percentage could be that much higher just because he didn't manage that project properly.
Yeah, although I think with the modeling, if the technology is there and the capability is there to pretty much model the entire build, right? Like you can digitally pre-build this home. As an example, we've started incorporating HVAC into all of we typically use open web floor joists. So we're actually running with the mechanical engineer. Here's another reason why you want us engaged earlier, is we're having the conversations with the mechanical engineers about, okay, how are we going to run the HVAC system through the house, have it all modeled. You can identify through clash detections the typical HVAC trunk through a structural beam that you're not going to figure out till you're on site building the house. You can figure that out digitally with the model. And again, back to being proactive versus reactive. Now we're going back to the mechanical engineer or maybe the structural engineer, saying, let's find a solution here, model it so that ideally we're handing drawings to our HVAC contractor that is saying, this is the exact cavity you're going to go down. This is how all your ducts are going to run, because we've already pre-planned it.
So how much are those changes going to hurt once you start building? That's what we had a conversation about where we had somebody else on, even with like panelization. And it's like, well, now you want to start cutting into walls and changing stuff. And it's like, we already designed all of this and paid for all of this to be done. and now like we're kind of redoing things.
Yeah. And I think this is where I mean, construction, I think we're the second worst industry at adopting innovation, right? At adopting technology. I think agriculture is the only one that's worse than us. This is where we have to embrace technology, right? So if you can model the house, the virtual reality, the rent, all of that stuff is there. It's available to us, so that hopefully you've got clients that now have virtually kind of walk through the house, and in an ideal world, you just have an understanding, especially when you're panelizing, that this is the design phase, this is the construction phase. Ideally, we do not want to be cutting into walls or changing walls or different dimensions during the construction phase. I know that's easier said than done, but I do think the more you can model, the more you can visualize and show clients, the virtual realities, all of that fun stuff, the more you can mitigate some of those changes.
I mean, that would be the goal.
Minimize too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the goal, to reduce that as much as possible and reduce the changes on site and keep things moving.
We're building a home right now for some AI guru, and he's invented the virtual reality technology to allow you, with the goggles on, to go in and actually turn on taps and see water come out of the faucets, or like open a door and physically see the door open. So the technology is there. I mean, it's we just have to kind of embrace it, and change the mindset of how we, especially as construction firms, how we approach the process.
So at that point, if again, that differentiates you, and even just being able to offer that to customers, it's like they have to select you in the first place. Like they have to go with you. And at that point, it's like you're putting yourself on this level that's completely different. And your pricing is kind of irrelevant at that point, because nobody else is offering this.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah. You exactly. And I think, that's, you've got the building science component, you've got the health and wellness component, and now you've got a process that's integrated for using the latest in modeling capabilities, which then translates into the panelization capabilities. You're right. You're comparing apples to oranges and this is what I say to clients when they're looking at us or one of my competitors. It's like, we kind of view it as we don't have a competitor. We're unique in the value proposition we offer.
It's like, what do you want? You got pick what you want. Do you want that or do you want this? And it's not, I don't know. For me, and maybe I'm different. Maybe it's because I am in the industry, but it's so easy to see that and be like, well, I have to pick one or the other. It's not really between those two. I mean, it is, but you got to make a decision. You can't have both, and you can't get anything close to option A if you go with B. They're just two separate paths. There's two separate processes, and there's two separate finished products.
Yeah. No, and the mechanical piece is the big one, right? Like, how many times are you building the house and all of a sudden recognize they have an HVAC trunk going right through a structural beam, and now you've got you're reacting to an unintended bulkhead that you're trying to create now into the design. All of that goes away when you model, when you proactively kind of digitally pre-build the house.
Which again is mitigating that and reducing those changes down the road, which helps keep things on schedule, helps keep things on budget, and also makes you're able to actually execute your design as intended. Not well, now we have to put this bulkhead, to be able to get this HVAC in. What are other options? You can actually execute that design as intended and not be like, well, somebody designed this wrong, or the HVAC guy or the architect didn't have
Point
this.
the finger. Yeah. So Aaron, how are you confirming that the client's actually retaining this? I feel like there's a lot of absentee clients, even though they're reviewing designs with architects or whatever, 2D, 3D, whatever. And then I get to the build and I don't assume that we're good, but then they walk the house and go, how many times I've had a client walk in to, let's say it's at the finish, and they go, oh, that's the paint color in my room? And I'm like, whoa, didn't you do all these samples? Don't you know this?
Yeah.
Like, what did I miss? And then like, they're like, oh, that's the countertop in here? And I'm like, yeah, that's what they signed off on. And so that's what I worry about, is that when we talk about this process, whether it's pre-con or the design phase, let's just say architecture were involved, is that we're assuming that everyone's of the same knowledge base and that they're absorbing the information. That's like, you and I look at drawings, all of us look at drawings and see something different.
Yeah.
And then the architect will see another motive or design, and we're assuming what the client sees. So if now you go to panelization, I know you have the modeling, I know you have all that, but someone could have a bad day at work, gotten in a fight with their, significant other, and then go to that meeting for that 3D model. And they're not going to admit that they're in a bad mood. They're not going to admit that they're not really paying attention or half paying attention. Because I guess if I can cut to the chase, is that I don't want to get to the build and go, you signed off on this.
Yeah.
I have in Dropbox a signature and initial from you on this model, and you went to this meeting in blah, blah, blah. The system has corrected all these things so we don't have this problem. So now you pay for this. And now what I say is, we don't manage products, we manage regret. I don't want to put a bigger value on a change and put regret in their pocket, that they walk in and go, I hate this, but I signed off on a model. I spent 20 grand on pre-con. I did all this stuff. So I'm going to stick with this window that looks at the neighbor's bathroom, and the guy doesn't have a blind.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, we're still custom home builders, right? And the key word there is custom. And yes, I think you can change a very reactive process and make it as reactive as possible. You're still going to have elements of changing. If it's an interior wall that has to shift 6 inches one way or another, doesn't matter if you're panelizing, right? That's still exactly the same way you would do it, even if you stick framed it. Finish changes, that's always going to happen. And to a certain degree, we've all worked with different levels of interior designers, and some have a lot more changes than others. So I think that's going to be just the reality of being a custom home builder to a certain degree, but I still don't want to give up on trying to use technology to make what we do more proactive than constantly just reacting to what the situation kind of presents itself, because it makes us inefficient. We end up being the bad guys, and we end up not truly demonstrating our value proposition to architectural firms, when I think they do need us at that process.
I 100% agree. I think the more you react, the more you're taking away from some other portion of the design of the home that needs to get executed. It's the same as, I love design, sketching stuff out, but the more I do of it, the less management I'm doing.
Yeah.
And there's just the reality of it. There's only so many hours in that day on that physical site that you have me. And if I'm going to do that, whatever I'm wasting it on, whether it's a client meeting that's not about the project, that's relationship part of it, I get it. But there's a lot of times where you have those meetings, and you'd all be lying if you said you didn't think about it, that at a certain portion of that meeting that you're having this casual conversation, you're like, what's happening right now? Like, what is that tile guy doing that I left an hour ago? What could he possibly be screwing up? And that's what takes away from, the data. It's a really tough balance.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree.
So what's your structure look like? I know, Ty, you got a hard stop, right?
I'll just dip out. You guys can keep going. I mean, it's up to you. 8:30.
Okay. I figured that with all the pre-con talk that we've kind of dove down the rabbit hole, what's the structure like with your company? PMs, you have carpenters. Are they lead carpenters? Are you calling them supers? What's their responsibility, versus title per se?
Yeah.
Back up their title with responsibility.
Yeah. So we have a PM department. We have site supers. We try to limit our site supers to 2 projects, kind of geographically located close to each other, which is, for us, what we find is the nice balance to kind of keeping a handle on quality and safety. We've got finance in-house. I know a lot of builders kind of do the external bookkeeper route. We just got to a point where we're like, we got to bring that in-house. So we have a finance department, And
it's funny you use that word.
What's that?
I feel like you were gonna then say you finance the house for like you're the bank.
No, God, no.
I know, but that's the finance part. I was like, my eyes perked. I was like, really? Because I've had clients ask, "Do you guys?"
Oh, I know.
And I'm like, what?
I do have a great construction finance broker, like finance broker, that we send clients to if they need financing. It's actually been invaluable. And then we actually kept the carpentry crew as Hummingbird Hill Timber Solutions. So technically it's a separate entity. We do have lead, so we've got lead carpenters or head carpenters, framing crew, and a finish crew, basically. So we have about 50 employees in total.
Wow. And that framing crew is billing to you guys, Hummingbird.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah.
And you don't have any designers on staff?
No, we sort of dabbled with interior design. We go back and forth on that mindset. There's pros and cons. I think if you're going to commit, back to our conversation about the integrated approach, you have to go all in or all out, right? So, at this point we're all out. We're just a construction firm.
What was your main reason for bringing finance in house?
Just with the amount of transactions, right? Not even just between us and homeowners, but between us and sub-trades. Just the volume that we felt we could better control. Back to the transparency with clients. We've got a process where we upload all paid invoices to the portal. So just having sort of in-house, we have two bookkeepers that sort of manage that process.
How'd you find those people?
Oh, it's hard as hell.
I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah, it's hard. That is the biggest challenge I think all of us probably have, right? Is just finding good people, qualified people. An unintended benefit, and I cannot take credit for this, but when we branded Hummingbird Hill around sustainability and around health and wellness, what I ended up realizing is we actually attract a certain type of employee that identifies with our brand. And that's actually been a huge benefit for us that I totally did not anticipate. So, the carpenters that sort of come to us when we post a job for a carpenter, they have a passion for building sustainably or health and wellness. Same thing with project managers and site supers.
You guys have like tea breaks instead of coffee breaks and stuff like that. Everyone takes vitamins.
we do little yoga sessions and meditation.
Everyone stretches at lunch.
Yeah, it sounds good, eh? So it's hard. We post we post jobs just like I'm sure you guys do, but we give our employees a little incentive if they can refer people to the company when we're looking to fill positions.
Are your carpenters generally younger, or just kind of run the gamut?
Our finished carpenters, we've got. I acknowledge my bias, but I think I've got two of the best finished carpenters, maybe even three of the best finished carpenters in the city. They're a bit older. The framers, I find, they're probably in their 35 or less, and then it's a mix throughout. But I mean, as an example, I'm not sure if this is an indication of anything or not, but we've got 25 carpenters. I think there's one that smokes. Again, not that that's an indication of anything, but it's just sort of a byproduct of who we're attracting for those types of positions.
We're talking cigarettes, right?
Yeah, I was gonna joke and say the other's vape.
We're like Colorado or whatever states legalize marijuana.
They all listen to Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And Fish.
God, it's a massive payroll.
Yeah.
Do you Do you have a Do you have a turnover with your framers, or is everyone stick around for a decent amount of time?
Oh, that's one of the hardest ones, right? Like none of the next generation that's coming up really wants to kind of get into that field. I find it's super hard to. I do talks with colleges and high schools about kind of trying to encourage them to consider trades. I don't know about you guys, but I get like a phone call every day from a new smart home provider, and I always say to them, listen, I'm dying for framers. If some of these young guys can or young people can get into framing, you'd never have to advertise a day in your life. But it's hard. That's a hard one. They have their own hashtag on Instagram, you know, the dying breed or something like that.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the finance question just real quick. That you said you have two bookkeepers. So is that, in compared to other people I've talked to that run two, is that so one runs the BIM and the other one runs the accounting software? And they're basically communicating and focus on one spot, or is that just because the overwhelming amount of transactions?
It's more the latter. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just sort of managing AR, AP,
Yeah.
that process of uploading into the BIM process, etc.
Gotcha.
I was going to ask. Sorry, John. I'm going to interrupt you real quickly to finish this framing conversation. So if you guys are panelizing a lot and it's in-house, are your framers transitioning over to framing basically not on site? Like how's that worked for you guys? Has it been a seamless transition?
It's an evolution, I guess, in the sense that they are framing now indoors. So there's pros and cons to that depending on the weather. But from a quality perspective, we're seeing a difference for sure. I think so when we deliver the panels to site, we've invested in that new Merlot, the telehandler that rotates 360 degrees, sort of a hybrid crane telehandler. And now the framers have the remote control strapped to their waist, and it's almost like playing a video game, right? They're picking up panels and kind of moving them into place, which I'm hoping will speak more to this younger generation coming up, that you're not killing yourself physically as much as you probably used to.
Yeah, I feel like framers, if you were in the area and getting into framing, that it would be a good opportunity to look that direction. I'm sure it's going to head more and more that way too. Yeah,
I personally think in a period of time, I don't know how many years, but they'll look back and say, what the hell were we thinking, shipping all of the lumber to site and hand cutting basically everything. I'm not sure how long it'll take for us to kind of realize that, but I think that's coming.
Yeah. You'll see my IG post in 20 years and go, what the hell is he still doing?
Yeah. Why are they using wood? So expensive.
What does he have in his hand?
It moves.
Hey, sorry, we didn't jump, but I wanted to ask about your high school talks, but what's lumber prices up in Canada like? Dude. Or is it just us?
Oh no, it's not you. I just had to recently tell a client. So we got the lumber price pre-COVID, of course, when we were pricing out the job. And as we framed it, it was, I think, $100,000 lumber package. And I had to do a change order for $75,000 incremental, same house, same amount of lumber, and no additional value really to the homeowner. So at the framing stage, we're still kind of in that developing trust, and here I am delivering a $75,000 change order because of lumber pricing. It's brutal.
Do you think that's going to impact the finishes? If you had done all your pre-selections for all that stuff, is that going to impact the budget that way, or is that what you're thinking in-house?
Yeah, it depends on the client. Like, I'm sure you get this too. Some clients just have a lot of money and they are very design driven, right? So nothing will impact the finishes. They have an objective, they're going to achieve it. Others that are much more budget conscious, for sure, 100%. they're going to have to cut back on hardwood and plumbing fixtures and lighting fixtures, etc.
So going back to the high school talks, forget about lumber, even though it's a hot button. Could go up another 35%.
I'd see me
crazy.
start to weep.
It's just crazy. And I feel like they're just trying to figure out if they can pop the bubble for the industry, and they just still can't. So they're just going to keep going. It's crazy. If it was gas prices, it would be like from 2 to 4 and then trying to get to 5.
It'd be
And
like,
I was around when that happened. I was a young driver then. I was just like, all right, I'll keep going. But I was young and naive, not thinking. I think people switched to diesel and all that. But high school, your high school talks, what's that like?
awesome. Yeah, I try to have some chats with the colleges and the high schools. Really, trying to change the mentality of high school, and it's automatic to sort of a white collar job, and really just trying to get them to understand the value of what going into the trades is, and the fact, I'm sure you guys are dealing with there's more trades retiring than there are coming in, so we've got a shortage there. We're just trying to kind of change the narrative around getting into the trades as a very honorable and rewarding career option.
I'm jealous that you're doing that.
You can always come up here and join me.
No, I mean, there's high schools here I should do it with, so that's not the excuse. I've thought of the idea. At the same time, I hate getting in front of people. So I guess I should just put that behind me.
Yeah,
that's why we do the podcast.
Yeah, but I'm also trying to figure out how you showing value, which is probably a trigger word, and I'm just have a short vocabulary, so I'm using that word. But like, how do we pivot people that are on the fence? I think this whole conversation, whether it's a client or a high school student, we're going to have the people that are 100% committed regardless. It's those people on the fence that we're trying to talk to. And is it showing them a different, like, that we can have a healthy life? Because I don't think that was something that was possible when I was younger. It was always like builders. I can't picture a builder that wasn't a production guy.
yeah.
When I was younger, I think they were all ladder on a truck people, and I can't think, and I've been trying to rack my brain with it. It's like, who would I have used for an example when I was still a laborer or carpenter? And I can't find anybody.
Yeah.
It was more pickup trucks, ladder on a truck. But how do you show that? I've thought about this 100 times. Like, what's going to get someone to change their mind? And besides just giving energy and passion to that conversation and go, hey, Mom, you're not going to believe, or Dad, who I met today. That's like one cool part, but like, how do we back that up?
Yeah.
Is it money saying, hey, you can have a healthy life and a healthy lifestyle? Or, because that's where the whole blue collar, towns used to come from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there were certain towns you lived in because that's what you could afford.
Yeah.
So how do we change? How are you changing that in that conversation?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. Money is one thing. If you look at what people are spending to go and get a 4-year college degree, is insane, and then that's never enough these days. So, you can get right into an apprentice program and start making money. But I don't think that's short-sighted if we just rely on that. I think it's speaking to those that want to build things, to create things, right? To be able to stand back at the end of the day and say, I did that, and be proud of that, and the fact that you are impacting other people's lives in a positive way, and there's not a lot of professions out there that can say that they do that, right? It's one of the reasons why we have focused on the health and wellness piece too, and the research that's coming out about that is the stuff that we build can actually have a much more meaningful impact on people's lives than we ever even realized. So I think it's a multifaceted approach. We've had good success. I've had a bunch of people come in. Same thing. I've got 3 daughters. I'm all about getting more women into trades too. One of our site supervisors is a woman, and she's amazing. She's absolutely amazing. So again, building kind of that discussion and conversation, I think is hugely important for us and for the future of what we do.
It's funny. I've talked to a few people, and everyone always, like Nick, you had a few trigger words in that discussion we had earlier about the pre-con thing. But a lot of people look at our industry and getting into it as a job, not as a career. And it starts at like summers, and it starts with these small increments of time that I don't want to use the word wasting, but you're using up till the real job or real career sets in. And I think that's the initial change. And I don't know if I think I asked you about the high school thing because I want to know if that's making a change, or if it's also like we talked about this between the three of us, is if we went to a school, we want to talk to the whole grade and the guidance counselors. Because there needs to be a sounding board that's deeper than just us going there. And, if someone meets them and then, hey, how do you follow up? They need to know that the guidance counselors also can see the same passion, because I don't even think I ever talked to a guidance counselor in high school. I don't remember that either. Yeah. But it's like, how do they know? And I think showing that this is a career and not just a summer job that you get stuck in and you try and make a career out of it, it is that. It is a career, and you can make good money and build some amazing things, and it's tangible. Yeah. My kids do it. My kids drive around. They love it. They're like, you built that one. And then I love when they pick a really, really nice house that I didn't build. I'm like, did you do that one? And I'm like, no, I didn't. But next time. Yeah. So like they're jumping up the game on their own. So my son's turning 14. I'm very interested to see. I've asked him, what are you into? Like, what do you? Because they assume that you're a high school senior and that you know what you're going to be to go into college. And I always think of that Ferris Bueller's part of the movie where he's singing on the float, and his girlfriend and best friend are talking like, do you want to go to college? Yeah, I'm going to go. What do you want to be? And they both look at each other and go, I have no idea. Yeah. And that's the majority of people. But if we're not getting our passion out there to people, then they don't know it's an option.
Yeah. And even just this podcast, I'm sure there's a lot of people contemplating in high school right now. That generation is certainly more attuned to podcasts than my generation. So the fact that you guys are doing this has an impact, right? And I think seeing people like us, and we've made a living, and we've made a good living, and it's not all like, there can be a professionalism to what we do. I think is great, and I commend you guys for doing this. This is awesome.
Yeah, I definitely think money is a big thing, but then also, like you're saying, people want to feel respected, and they don't want to be looked down on. I think that society as a whole can be very judgmental, especially in towns where it's not as blue collar and it's not hip to work with your hands, and it's kind of a second class life. And I think that if people can kind of have a bit more dignity for what we do and for what they do, and demand respect for themselves and for the trades, that it would be helpful too for people to be able to say, hey, yeah, I'm a carpenter and I'm proud of being a carpenter. And if my kid wants to become a carpenter, I'm okay with that. And it hasn't been that way for a long time. So I think that, the attitude does have to shift some, and demand a little bit more respect for what we do. And I think that will also help it be a more relatable career choice, or for boys, for girls, for the future to get into. But yeah, so much of that is also money, like where there's just other options where you don't have to kill yourself and you can make more money. You can have a 401k, and you can have health benefits and a company vehicle. And that's tough with a lot of small scale construction companies.
Yeah.
It's a big overhead.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a great point. But I think we are, changing the narrative. I think people are starting to realize it can be a very professional, honorable career, that you can be proud of. And that's certainly the message that I try to deliver to people. We take apprentices in all the time, and that's, you kind of want to, if nothing else, yeah, they're going to learn some skills, but you want their mentality thinking that way as they go back to school.
Yeah.
But change takes time, right? And changing the narrative takes a bit of time. But I think, like I said, things like this actually is hugely impactful, in my opinion.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm sure it's one of those things that, as things tend to get worse before they can get better, and I think that it does kind of have to hit a certain point where there's going to be like more of a disparity between the good guys and the guys who are out there to make a buck or take advantage of people. And I think that as that kind of happens, people will be more in tune to that there's a difference between, there's differences within this industry, there's levels to this, and I think that will present some opportunities for people, because it's going to be like, hey, there's a lot of people who want to hire really good guys because they know that there's a lot of stuff out there that's not so good, and I think that'll present some opportunities for people too.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, because I think we have to be teaching business skills in the trades too. It can't just be applied skills as a mindset, because as an industry, there are that bottom 10% that are they're terrible, right? They're not, their motives are not right. They're there to scam people, whatever. There's a big chunk of the contractors that they don't, like we talked about before, they don't know how to scale, right? They don't know how to create a professional process and build off of that. So they end up sort of being contained within that, very small operation that just goes kind of from job to job to job. Whereas I think, again, raising the water level, so to speak, for the industry, and training them on business skills and how to present a business plan. I mean, John, you asked in the beginning kind of how I set my mindset. I do an annual business plan, and I've always got a 5-year strategic plan that I'm constantly updating as well, so that, we can scale the business, we can hire very professional people. Creating environments like that in itself for tradespeople, I think will be beneficial. But yeah, it's gonna take some time to change the narrative for sure.
All right, guys, I have to. Sorry, I was reading an email. I got to dip out. I appreciate your time. I'm early. You guys can hang or whatever you guys are going to do to close things out. But thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was good to talk to you. Sorry you couldn't get a beer. I can't believe John and Nick didn't tell you.
Yeah, I'm going to go straight and grab one right now as soon as we're done.
Attaboy.
Well, thank you, Nick and John. Thank you. I'll catch up with you guys later.
See ya.
You got it, brother.
See ya.
See you, Tyler.
Aaron, so go ahead. No, I was gonna say, as you've scaled up and you have these divisions of your company, what has been, what is the focus going into this year and 2022?
It's really the technology piece. We're trying to sort of integrate the whole Revit, BIM 360.
When did you make the switch from co-construct to BIM?
About 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years.
And that's really to get the client to be far more technically involved.
No, initially it was, to be honest, it was selfishly just so that we could do a better job at sort of planning the execution phase.
Gotcha.
A lot of the drawings we would get, there was no overlay of mechanical onto, so we were basically doing that so that the construction phase would be more efficient. Mm-hmm. But from that, it's actually opened up the opportunities to kind of approach the architects about that integrated approach that we talked about, getting in earlier in the process. It's also opened up the opportunity for panelization.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to do that without sort of embracing that technology.
So do you want to expand on the panelization side of it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we'll see kind of how that unfolds. Right now, we're just doing our own builds, but yeah, that's a game changer for us. I won't stick frame traditionally another house going forward. We're even doing renovations, like additions with panels.
That's awesome.
I'll send you some prints. I'll be
Yeah.
your first.
That's a deal. As long as you got the beer ready, I'll be there.
Dude, without a doubt. I buy 4 at a time.
That's
They're all singles. They're all the Maine Beer Company. Send me your address and I'll send them off to you. They're phenomenal.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
They're $7 a piece, but if I only have 2 a week, I think it evens off.
Yeah.
But dude, I get passive house, and it's a hot button item for a lot of people because they want to be in that niche per se, or show that value. But the wellness part, we've talked about that, you know, probably tickled the surface of it with FUBOTs and, you know, air quality and all this. And you've done a lot deeper. I mean, just in the brand, let's just go beyond the, you know, Hummingbird part of it. Hummingbird Hill is, you know, the Thrive part. I love that because the depth of that word is amazing. And it's well done. But speak to more about the wellness and what are you focusing on? But I also feel like at the same time when you talk about this, you've also been able to conquer so many parts of construction, like the day-to-day monotony of getting subs there, obviously controlling framing, but then being able to build the schedule and state of that gives you the opportunity to expand into, you know, wellness. Because a lot of people are I've said it in my I want to do this too. I want to do everything. The problem is you have to do the original thing is really, really well before you can move on to expanding into this. Yeah. So how'd you get there, that evolution, but then now what are you focusing on with the wellness part?
Yeah, the great question. What I found was when we became Passive House certified and we were trying to sort of, you know, communicate to clients about building science, most of it just went like straight over their heads, right? And what I found was instead of talking about, I'll give you an example, is air leakage rates, instead of talking about it from a sustainability standpoint and the advantages of, you know, downsizing your mechanical systems and all the efficiencies that you gain from a tight envelope. Once I transitioned air leakage rates to health and wellness, and now we talked about indoor air quality and the impact that has on people's health, different conversation, right? Totally different conversation. So we've sort of transitioned because there's a lot of research that's coming out on this. You know, there's the Well Building Institute. There's the Well Living Lab, which I think is partnered with the Mayo Clinic. They're doing studies that are showing us, you know, lighting matters. You know, we're not even thinking about lighting when we build homes typically, right? But
it didn't come on the radar until everyone loved LED, and then they started putting them in nursing homes, and it was all the original blue light stuff, and then they couldn't figure out why no one would go to bed.
That's exactly right.
It's so true. My client taught me about that about the what is it? I'm drawing a blank, but you know, the circadian rhythm of the sun. You know how you wake up and then how you go to bed. We had the first technology in one of our builds that when you turn the light on, it's automatically at that time of day.
Yeah. So
that way you're not changing your rhythm.
We just did a house that had a dawn simulation. So in the morning, instead of an alarm clock, the lighting would start to simulate a sunrise in the room, and your blinds would slowly come up, and actually the sound of I think it was birds chirping or nature, something would slowly start to sort of fill the room, so that's how you're waking up. Sounds kind of hokey, but oh my gosh, when you're actually standing in the room and watch this dawn simulation, I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
So if you dim it, does it all go away and the blinds close?
And then you hit the snooze button and everything just disappears.
Then it slowly comes back 10 minutes later.
Go from birds to like crows, and they start to get louder. I don't know. But yeah, lighting is huge, right? And we're starting to realize from a circadian rhythm standpoint, how we light our houses has been wrong. And so there's a whole conversation around healthy lighting. We get into acoustics, the acoustical privacy thing, and how much gray noise impacts kind of stress levels, and thermal comfort, air quality. We even get into water purification. So I think it can't be me selling this. This has to be based on the research, right? And the research that's coming out supports this. And I think, the health and wellness industry is one of the fastest growing industries in the world right now. So why on earth would construction, especially as we realize the impact our built environment has on health and wellness, why on earth would we not sort of gravitate and grab onto this for our clients? It's been huge for us.
It's very interesting that Passive House was your gateway, because that was the same for me. When I learned about Passive House, and you can put windows on a certain side for, solar glare, solar gain, and everything else. But at a certain point, the efficiency is lost unless you're willing to change the way you live.
Yeah.
And you're willing to sacrifice design for efficiencies and actual the sustainability of the home, in its own right. And that was the first moment that construction went into how you had to change. It's like when we make an income, if you change your income, then you have to change your cost of living. If you don't do the other one, then guess what? You're going to be in debt. But in construction, it was never, I have to change the way I live. I'm building something to fit me. And that was the first time that it's, how do you have to change a little bit in order to make X amount of improvement, whether it's going to be health, wellness, or efficiencies, for longevity of, fossil fuel, whatever it is, And I think that was the first step. So now this is the next step for you.
Yeah, for sure. I think, that was the transition. I think everyone inherently wants to do right for the environment. I think that's where Passive House comes in around the topic of sustainability. But if you tell them that they have to sacrifice their hardwood floors or their marble countertops to build more sustainably, it's like, boom, forget it, right? So when you connect the dots with health and wellness and the impact certain built environment components have on that, totally different conversation, right? And there's a personal, interest and investment that people are willing to kind of to make for that. Ideally, you want to do both, right? And that's kind of what we've built ourselves on is that built to. So I actually trademarked the term "built to thrive," and that's exactly what it is. It's really about how do we thrive, kind of from a health and wellness standpoint as people, as humans, but how do we also, being a builder, how do we do so that also encourages the environment to thrive too, right? Because the two are so interconnected. You can't do one without the other. So that's I appreciate the feedback. I'm glad you noticed that, because that's.
So I have to pull it off my banner. No, I'm joking.
You're in the U.S.
Just right, yeah, just write U.S.
Yeah, don't worry.
Built to thrive in U.S.
My trademark stops at the border, so don't worry. That's again, how back to the branding and how do we kind of differentiate ourselves compared to other builders. That's worked really well.
So looking in a crystal ball, where do you think that's going to go? I mean, technology and all that stuff's obviously going to creep into our homes, but the wellness part, how far do you see that going?
I think it's going to be huge. I think the homes are going to be more automated. I think you're going to start to see biosensors in the home. Like right now, how we are how we introduce fresh air is really passive, right? Through our HRV or ERV. I think we're right around the corner from having sensors that will actually measure indoor air quality. And when it drops below a threshold, it's going to kick on and bring in the fresh air and exhale the stale air. I think, we're going to look at a lot of opportunities around growing our own food in the kitchens. I think you're going to start to see some of that with the kitchen designers and manufacturers. This is kind of gross, but they're actually developing toilets that can measure biomarkers in your piss and poop that will actually then tell you what your if your whatever iron is too high or those types of things. So I think this is coming for sure. I think it's going to integrate really significantly into our homes without a doubt.
Yeah, I think we started installing the Ecobee thermostat because it has that kind of air quality sensor, and it will talk to the HRV. So we started doing that just because we were doing the Nests, and then it was cool. I love it. And I love the learning part of it. The problem is it's almost too smart, and it's not. I love Ecobee takes a sensor of the outside as well. So if it's 60 today, in your habitat and your habit has been, turning the thermostat to this, it will then go, it's already 70 outside. Like, I don't need to do that. Where the Ecobee will still go by, the Nest will still go by your habit of turning this up. And I did Ecobee way back in the day, and then I jumped on the wagon for Nest, and now I've gone back because Ecobee was the first smart thermostat out there. Yeah. And they, I forgot about them until Chathui turned me back onto it at one of Nick's talks, and it was great.
Yeah, we just installed one of the IQ Air MERV 16 filters. That's a big topic. Talk about kind of COVID related. Being able to filter the air down to a hospital grade level with and they have an indoor air monitoring system as well. That sort of is the last one I saw was kind of the size of an iPhone. That kicks on, it'll measure and has takes it much more from a passive to an active approach, which I think is cool.
I feel like that could be bundled into one of those. God, I'm actually looking up the app. The Savant could probably still control that as well. So you're under one bubble, because I know that it's amazing how lazy we are. That, I remember a couple years ago, I'd be like, you're fine. You go to the Nest app, you go to this app for Sonos, and now people are like, I want one app.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, it's still on your phone. Your remote's on your phone, but people still.
Yeah, it went from not wanting to get off the couch and doing it with your phone to I don't want to open more than one app.
Which is crazy. Isn't that nuts?
I know.
Yeah. But it's true. I mean,
I do it.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I gotta change my app to look at my different thermostat.
It's so funny, and that's why I love the new Ring. I'm not like a big doorbell guy. I have the Nest in my own house, but the new Ring that's recessed in, and it looks like a regular doorbell.
Yeah,
is lights out.
Yeah,
I mean I think that's what are you guys seeing for cameras and stuff like that for technology wise?
Yeah, I mean that's big for sure. Or if it's if it's a higher level security objective, then we've got a couple of smart home guys that I'm finding Control 4 is a bigger platform here than Savant, but I'm sure it's just localized. But it's all tied in, all the security cameras into the Control 4 system.
I used to use Control 4 all the time. It was 2002. It was the thing. You even had the little keypads for sound everywhere. That was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Now I just sound old.
Yeah. You're not as old as me, I don't think.
Yeah, but it's crazy. Man, I love what you're doing. It's I definitely want to check back in a year. Just besides just me checking your IG and stalking it. You've been an inspiration to what I'm trying to do, so I love it, and I'm it's even more fun hearing you, digging into school talk and all that. I'm like, oh, now I'm jazzed. We're doing a school tour finally once COVID's gone.
Yeah, I'd love it. It'd be awesome. No, I appreciate that feedback. That means a lot coming from you, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you being on. It's like I said, John turned me on to you guys, and I've been stalking your stuff ever since. And it's cool to see the stuff that you build, and just to repeat myself, it's like the modern architecture, but the really intentional approach to it from a health and wellness is huge. And like you said, I agree with you. It's far bigger than what we are seeing right now, and for you to be on the forefront of it is pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you. Thanks. I appreciate it. Once this COVID stuff calms down, we'll have to plan a meeting. You don't have to twist my arm to come into to Boston.
We'll come up to
we're going
Toronto.
to you.
Yeah.
Or
I've seen enough around here. I want to go elsewhere.
Yeah, or come here.
We'll say we're coming up, and we might just promote it as a builder summit. So plan for 25. Okay?
Yeah.
Beautiful. More the merrier.
Awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Aaron, thanks so much, man.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Go enjoy that beer.
Yeah, I'm going right now.
Take care, man.
Dude.
Take care.
They build some cool stuff.
They do, and he's so humbled, and
yeah,
I like him a lot. It's I haven't been able to. I almost intentionally didn't have a conversation with him offline because I wanted to be here.
If you guys want to find it, hummingbirdhillhomes.com. He's got a pretty badass website too. His branding's on point. He's done a really good job. I'm looking for that little trademark symbol beside Built to Thrive. Oh, it is there.
Is it?
Yeah. Man.
It's clean though, right?
Really clean.
Everything. Like when he does his stories where he's like filming from his truck.
Yeah.
And it's just one windscreen after another, and it's like designed by, all clean. And I'm like, so we're on this call, and I'm like, why am I not doing that on 9 Lowell? Like I should be doing the designer. And so now, like, I bought a bunch of Facebook Marketplace. I bought a bunch of construction fence.
Mm-hmm.
It was like $30 a panel, maybe less. It's $300 for, it was $30 a panel. And I got them all, and I'm like, all right. So I ordered the windscreens, but now I'm like, I thought of gates for some reason because I also like the Fox Group. They do their foxes on the gates, so it's like an inspiration of all of them. But I love that he does the designers and architects. Yeah. How to even do one panel that's all the trades instead of putting it up there.
In Austin, when I went down there and on Lake Austin, every one of the projects that is being built on the lake, the entire lakeside is all windscreen.
Oh,
and it's everyone. It's the builder, the architect, the kitchen cabinet company, the electrician, the plumber, the painter, like everyone, and it's 200 feet long.
That's crazy.
And it's not even just one builder. It's every job I saw. I was like, that's crazy.
That's
but
cool.
It's like you're cruising by in your wake boat, and it's like, oh yeah, look at that. This is my, I'm painting that house. Look at this, my logo.
That is cool. I guess people would buy into it. I would love to do the trades because I keep their signs up and try and keep them organized.
Yeah.
And I usually take heat on it on social because they're like, if they want to advertise, it should be word of mouth or whatever. And I'm like, dude, I'm happy. I just want it cleaned. I usually staple it on to the windscreen itself, but
yeah,
as long as it looks organized, I'm happy to promote people.
Totally. you know what? I didn't even look to see if we had any new reviews this week.
Let me see if we have any Survey Monkey. 111 surveys.
Nice. You got one. Will, 19 years old, saying it's the best podcast, 5 stars. He started his own company for side work while working for a big commercial construction company. And y'all's podcast has inspired me in a lot of ways, keeping me plugging along even when the days get tough. I hope to become a builder one day, and I listen to this podcast because of how much free information you guys give out. I hate sweeping at work, but this gets me through it. I hope to hear a podcast from you about starting your own company and maybe a few episodes with Spencer Lewis ASAP.
I just read a comment on the
a few
survey.
More episodes.
Yeah, they said, God, where is it? Spencer Lewis more than once a year.
Man,
they
said Carpenter might need to be our number 4.
Right? And then Carpenter won again. Someone said me. I'm a framing contractor and a millennial. William Douglas. He's on YouTube in Phoenix. Nick Offerman. I've already tried to reach out to his people. I haven't gotten anything. We do have contact with Jimmy DeResta. I'm trying to lock that one up. Table Maker, round 2. South Coast Dad, Matthew Cunningham. He's a local landscape architect. I should reach out to him.
Yep.
Your boy Steve Teak. Is it Stephen Teak?
Yep.
Is that wrong?
Steve, yeah. I think he's. I feel like he might be signed up.
Yeah, and this is a great spot. So if anybody wants to leave construction criticism, which is great, but also there's a spot there to give your list of guests that you want to have us reach out to, which I have been doing, and you'll see them come in, sporadically throughout the podcast.
Well, and next week we got all the way from Melbourne, Australia, Nook Construction, Jack. So
Another good company. I like their branding.
He wants to talk about the tender process.
Not again.
Man, that's
maybe we're the ones that don't do it. Maybe
I feel like once we talk about one thing, it like panelization. All right, well, for the next 4 episodes, we're gonna talk about panelization.
Who would have thought that though? That it's leaching into more and more episodes without being coaxed out, which is kind of funny.
So next week we got Jack from Nook Construction. If you guys aren't following him, check him out on Instagram, nookconstruction.com, and we'll see you guys next week. This podcast is brought to you by Duration Moulding and Millwork. In a world of ever-increasing lead times and escalating pricing, how about a product that gives you neither? That's right, even completely custom molding profiles are produced in just 2 weeks from Duration. And as other molding and siding product line prices continue to march upward, Duration's remains the same. Get exactly what you want, quickly, efficiently, and cost-effectively. And to learn more about Duration Poly Ash products, please visit their website at durationmillwork.com. And be sure to check them out on Instagram.